Then on the strand, with steeds and treasure and armor, their roomy and ring-dight ship was heavily laden. High its mast rose over Hrothgar's hoarded gems. A sword to the boat-guard Beowulf gave, mounted with gold. On the mead bench, since he was better esteemed, that blade possessing heirloom old. Their ocean keel boarding, they drove through the deep, and Daneland left. A sea-cloth was set, a sail with ropes firm to the mast, the flood timbers moaned. Nor did wind over billows that wave-swimmer blow across from her course. The craft sped on, foam-necked it floated forth o'er the waves, keel firm-bound over briny currents, till they got them sight of the Geatish cliffs, home-known headlands. High the boat, stirred by winds, on the strand updrove. Helpful at haven the harbour guard stood, who long already for loved companions by the water had waited and watched afar. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Beowulf, Age of Heroes. We are here today on day 2 of Beowulf, Age of Heroes, with our second of 2 heroes. Today it is Trendane and Arilfer, who is the hero that will be going forth in part 1 of the 3 Ogre brothers. I'm very excited for this. I hope you folks are as well. Again, thank you so much to the amazing Nari for that music, to the amazing Peripheral Mike for the video work that he did, and of course to the amazing Tari Tunes for much of the art that you are going to see in today's session. Tari did a wonderful job in getting things started last week as we moved things forward with the Runesild. But today, Trend takes over as he begins his adventure with the 3 Ogre brothers, which is going to be very exciting. I am super pumped up for it. And I hope you folks are as well. Before we go any further, just a couple of reminders about ways to support us here on the channel. If you haven't done so already, please follow the channel. Please check out our YouTube with the ! ArvTube. And if you're watching me over on the YouTube channel, thank you so much for being here, and please consider jumping over to our stream over on Twitch as well, where you can join us, and we have people doing inspirations and all that kind of good stuff over there, so please consider doing that if you are over there as well. If you have not already done so, please consider as well not following the channel and the YouTube, as I mentioned, but please also join our Discord with !ArvCord, where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams. Twitter, where I always post where I'm going live, which I did today as well, is !ArvTweets. Blue Sky, where I also post now, is !ArvSky. Website for this, arvaneleron.com. Financially, !ArvShop is the merchandise area. !ArvTreon is the Patreon, really the financial backbone of the channel. And I really, the support that we get in the Patreon and subbing to the channel really makes a huge difference. So please consider doing that if you possibly can. Speaking of subbing, you can do that as well. Subbing and resubbing is always appreciated, and that allows you to get those custom sub badges and emotes to use here, there, and everywhere across Twitch. Supporting the Patreon gives you some other cool stuff as well, so please consider doing all of that good stuff. If you haven't already done so, please consider as well supporting us on the publishing side. !Icarus for my graphic novel from Athos Arts. !Library is my Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library. That's my 5e adventure and sourcebook from Alligator Alley Entertainment. And Greyshade. I should mention, wait, before I move past library, I should say, Library, that is also where you'll find the trilogy of adventures, which are the Forbidden Library trilogy. And the second one of those, Return to the Forbidden Forbidden Library, thank you, Triffid, is going to be happening a week from this Friday, January 26th. It's going to be happening 6 p.m. There's a little mini-con before that, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern, where we'll have a couple of stores and so on in the lobby, and you can buy merchandise and hang out with other cool people that love to watch stuff like this. This is all free to attend, of course. The merchandise is from the shops. That you have to pay for, but otherwise it's free to come to the event. And the event itself gets started at 6 p.m. Eastern. It will run from 6 to 9 in the Klein Memorial Auditorium in Bridgeport, Connecticut, the sequel to last year's Night at the Forbidden Library. And we will have 4 of the same players and 1 different one. Very excited for that in front of a live studio audience. I'll also be live streaming this, so you can see that right there with that exclamation point Klein 2 command. And if you want to get a sneak peek on what the adventure might look like, that you can do by checking out exclamation, unless you're one of my players, in which case you're not allowed to do this. Exclamation point library is what you do for that. Exclamation point Greyshade is my Grey Assassin trilogy. First 2 books, Greyshade and Renegade, are out now. Third book, Heretic, is being written as we speak. That will be ready later this year. So you can buy Greyshade and Renegade right now. You can buy the audiobook done by a certain Trend Sparks. That you can also do right now. And you can pre-order the tabletop role-playing game of Greyshade done by Brandon O'Brien and Alligator Alley Entertainment. And you can pre-order Heretic, the final book in the Grey Assassin trilogy. The tabletop game will be coming out late this year. Heretic will be out in the summer of this year. So that's what we're looking at. I'm very excited for all of that stuff. And as always, exclamation point BLM, Black Lives Matter, important to affirm and assert the significance and importance of Black lives. Exclamation point Help Now, the World Health Organization page on suicide prevention. Important to reach out to others when you need help and reach out to others when they need help as well. And exclamation point Ukraine, UKRAINE, to help the people of Ukraine as they fight back against an illegal and illegitimate war with bravery and courage, and send the message we will do so for others in the future. Quick note on schedule. Beowulf Day 2 with Tren happens today. At the end of today's session, we're going to be doing the nominations for the Patreon Field Chat Chosen Game of the Month, which I will be playing in 2 weeks. So we're going to be doing the nominations for that today. Tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, over at GOGCom's Twitch channel at 4:15 p.m. Eastern, we'll be playing Talisman Adventures, not the board game, but Talisman Adventures with the GOG crew. And then tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, we will be back with the amazing Our Vocalists. I actually have a couple of games that I have to decide between still, so I'll make that decision sometime today, and then tonight will be the Our Vocalists with their return engagement. So I'm very excited for that. That'll be happening this evening, and and then Thursday I'll be back this week with D&D with viewers Thursday evening. So that's what we've got going on with the schedule. But now I'm going to unmute myself so Trent knows that we are ready to go, and then I am going to unmute him. And last but certainly not least, we're going over to reveal, I believe it is, make sure that I get the right one to begin with. I'm glad I checked. This one, there we go. That's the one that's there. And I am here. Hi, everybody. I'm Arv. I'm the channel person and the one who runs the GM and all that kind of good stuff. And I am joined today by the second of 2 Beowulf heroes. First one last week did a great job opening up the Hermit's Sanctuary. But today we have got the 3 Ogre brothers with this gentleman that you see on the screen. And I just want to point out that this is a direct translation, as you can see, if you look at that character, of Tren's actual physical characteristics. So that Tren normally walks around the Bay Area carrying a sharpened stick, and, you know, just so you know. Trent, I'm glad you came in. Put down your sharpened stick. Oh, you're actually going to get a sharpened stick? I didn't know that you had a sharpened stick that you could get, but that's pretty awesome. I can't wait to see this. Aha! It is a staff. Oh, it is a sharpened stick. That's pretty awesome. See? So it's perfect. It's well suited for it. Trent's good to see you. How you doing, my friend? How is life in the universe with you? Any thoughts as we get started on today's things you're wondering about, looking forward to, not sure about with this duet system here?
Yeah, all of it.
Okay.
Now, having watched Tara's episode, I'm more comfortable with it, but one of my for those of you in the audience, one of my prerequisites for doing this thing was that we play around before we get started, because I didn't want to have to learn how to do this on camera and forget. So episode 0, we played exactly none. So
that's true. We didn't play. We did talk a lot about it.
So my only exposure to how the game actually works was watching Tari play, and uh, it's okay, but there's a bit of a pressure difference between watching somebody do it and going, "Oh, I wouldn't have done that way," and being in the moment, and you're just, "Oh my God, what do I do?" And you panic and you do stuff you would never do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, really. Um, mm,
Do you have anything you want to say about your character? And I know we spoke a little bit about this during session 0 on stream, but anything else you may have learned? Because
yes.
we're learning about a real fur through play. So have you learned anything else about a real fur before the play, so to speak?
Yeah. And it would become immediately apparent to anyone. And just in case I'm like under extreme pressure and forget to
Yes.
mention it, I will mention it now. Um, since he is kind of a feral child kind of thing, he's not a child, but whatever. Um, he has a conservation of movement. He does not move unless he has to.
Okay.
He tends to sit very, very still, and he will just move his eyes back and forth as far as he needs to look at something. And only then, if he has to look further than that, will he start to turn his head, and he will do it very slowly. This is just, in his normal operation. But if
Right.
he gets into a mode where he has to be leaderly, or he has to have more of a commanding presence, instead of kind of being slightly hunched, like just like some sort of a stalking animal,
Mm-hmm.
where just kind of all the muscles are flexed, but they're primed. They're always wiry and primed.
Yeah.
But if he has to do the commanding presence thing, he will then stand up much straighter. As I showed you in Tower and Triffid, the perfect example of this is in Superman the movie. After
Yes. Yes. That was a great. Yeah.
after
I'd forgotten about that scene until you showed it to us. Yeah.
until Superman brings Lois Lane back from their first flight, aside from the helicopter thing, and when he flies off and Clark is knocking on the door and comes in, and she goes off to get ready to go on their date thing, and he takes his glasses off and he stands up straight, and you're just like, how does this man do this?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
suddenly he goes from being Clark Kent, this little mousy guy, into being Superman. And it's not that Arilfer is mousy. He's not. There's definitely a wildness, almost bestial aspect to him.
Yeah.
But with the one thing I didn't mention in Discord in the conversation is that he rarely uses furniture.
Okay.
If he's like in a mead hall or something, he will like crouch down into a squat or something, or he will sit on the ground, but he won't sit in a chair.
Interesting.
If
Okay.
he does have to use a chair, he will use like a child's chair or a small stool, something that is much closer to the ground.
Interesting.
So he's still almost, squatting down and hunched and everything. Um, but he doesn't like to use furniture.
Is this a function of preparedness? Like
Yeah.
always kind of like, being ready to jump at any time,
Yeah.
like a cat, so to speak?
Yeah, basically,
Okay.
because if you sit in a chair for any length of time, you know what it's like when you're like, "Oh my God,
Getting out
my
of it, is it?
legs."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Yep,
He
yep.
does not like that. He did that for a little while, and it was like, no, no, not doing that.
Yep. That's yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually.
And he has 2 followers.
Yes, and I was just about to ask about that. Pow. Okay, I have put up the followers, so this cast of thousands is mostly that's Runesild's, but we have 2 that are his. So can we pick out his, please?
Yes. Can anybody guess which 2 of those are Arilfer's followers? Yes, you're exactly right. It's the animals. So one of them is an osprey named Peep, and the other one is a young, not like puppy, but he's young. He's not fully adult yet. Wolf named Ile.
Ile. Yeah, and I have to remember that, not Ila, Ile.
Ile.
I had the wrong. Ile. A. Okay, no, not A. Ile. A. I was thinking about Tari. Okay. So Peep and Ile. And just you mentioned to me before how that these both came as a unit, basically, right? Like they arrived at the same time into Arilfer's life. Is that accurate?
Hang on a second. Let me correct Anyway,
Yeah,
yes.
Peep is the osprey, and the wolf is named Ile, and it's ILH. Yeah, you already put it in.
ILHE. Yeah.
Yep.
Eli, it's actually a character in a story that I was writing a very, very long time ago, and he was a very tiny wolf who was kind of the things like alpha, beta, omega, a pack structure is complete bullshit.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he's
yeah.
been,
It's all
whatever.
dog whisperer
But
crap. Yeah.
if it were real, he would have been the omega of the pack. He would have been the
Okay.
lowest man on the totem pole, which the omega is usually the instigator of play. So he's kind of the diffuser of most. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't. Blah, blah, blah. Eli's young, and so as a result, he has. If he's in a situation where him being young would be a detriment to his ability to do something, that is something that said GM needs to remember.
Yes. The
That is
burden
his
of
one
his
negative.
youth. And Peep has no weakness. He's just,
Right. Yeah.
he's just an immortal bird who can do anything. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. But your question was, how did they show up?
Yes.
So Arvan was out kind of on the whatever the equivalent of the moors would be in
The fens, I guess.
yeah, out
Okay.
in that area where those Utes come from.
The Utes.
But he was out there one day and he kind of looked off toward the horizon and he saw this weird shape, kind of non-symmetrical shape coming trotting or more loping toward him. And as it got closer, he realized it was a wolf with like a stick in its mouth, and on one end of the stick was this bird that was perched there. And they basically came along and they kind of adopted him. It was more them adopting him than him adopting them. So,
And that's how it's been. How long would you say they've been together as a group, the followers and Arilfer?
probably, I'd say, since Eli is still young, probably 8 or 9 months at
Okay.
most, but they've spent all of their time together.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
they have gotten to the point where they know each other's mannerisms, they know each other's body language, and Arilfer can speak with animals, so you can talk to them anyway.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good stuff. So that is what we have before us. I will remove that. And again, chat, for those of you who were not here for the last one. So this is
Last
a duel.
thing,
Oh, sorry.
last
Go
thing.
ahead. I beg your pardon.
The stick that Eli was carrying
Yes,
in his
yes.
mouth that Peep was perched on is actually, it has basically like copper woven around it, and it's got metal caps on the end. And what he did was he bent it and he made it into the torque that he is wearing around his neck in that art piece.
Oh, I see. So wait a minute. It was pulled from. I'm not following. Pulled from the staff.
It looked like a stick at range, but as he got closer, he saw that it wasn't a stick. It was actually a root that had been woven with a
I see.
strip of copper and copper caps on the end.
That's cool.
That's bent it into the torque.
That's very cool. Okay. So he has the copper torque around his neck. Hello, Yedisek. Cool. All right. Well, that is good stuff. And for those of you who are not here, so in our first session with Tari, we played this, which was the Hermit's Sanctuary. And that's the adventure that currently Runesild is on. But that is not the adventure that we are on today with Tren. What we are on today is this one, which is the Three Ogre Brothers. And I'm sure that is just metaphorical. I mean, I'm sure we're just talking like it's just Bob, Joe, and Steve Ogre. You know, I'm sure that's all it is.
Right. And for those of you watching on stream, it clearly says
Cree. I gotta move that over. I was trying to zoom in. Part of the problem is there's a lot of pictures in this that I've had to add on. So a lot of it is just like, where do I
am of the
put
opinion
the
that
thing?
you could shrink our pictures down by like 30% and still.
Hey, you talk to the artist about that, all right?
I'm just saying.
You know, that's the artist's job to worry about those things. Okay.
Pretty sure people know who we are and what we look like. We don't need to be this big.
Okay. All right, let's see. Put that there. There we go. Okay, great. So we are here with the Three Ogre brothers. I keep thinking about, the Ogre brothers that are three. Okay, but they are not witches. They are in fact Ogre brothers. And what does that mean? Well, let's find out.
Oh yeah, that's a good plan.
Listen! A baleful and blasted kingdom, barren of hall and harvest, where mare and mire merge with midden. There bitter Bregda bides as lord. Lonely and wind-whipped hills are a mighty throne for Magan's malice. Bald holds the mountain's malevolent Hidaj, a bone-tithe boon to feast the Bretwalda. 3 kin callous sinnings rule there, a hated realm, a hearth for hardship. From time to time, a thane of the king, who had made many vaunts and was mindful of verses, stored with sagas and songs of old, bound word to word in well-knit rhyme, welded his lay of the warlike deeds he had heard in the saga of Sigamund. Strange the story. He said it all. The whale sings wanderings wide, his struggles which never were told to tribes of men, the feuds and the frauds, save to Fitela only, when of these doings he deigned to speak, uncle to nephew. As ever the twain stood side by side in stress of war, and multitude of the monster kind they had felled with their swords. Now, this poem, which introduces us to the opening of each of these adventures, the first portion of that, the baleful and blasted kingdom, the bitter Bregda, the Magan's malice, bald and the mountain's malevolent Hidaj, 3 kin callous sinnings ruling there, that is a little bit of the clue, or at least a little bit of information, very basic information, that Arilfor may need in what is to come next. And Arilfor, as we begin today, first of all, let me fire up a little bit of music here. Let's pop up some, let's do some, a little bit of tavern music here, I think. Lovely. Okay. In fact, I would like you to continue to play that for a while. That's perfect. Sorry, let me play that again, but do it from here. Right. Okay. Arilfor, you have found yourself with your dearest friends Peep and Ile outside because we don't serve their kind in here. No, because they can't because we can't necessarily have the animals outside inside. Although they do have spaces where wolves and ospreys could wander free. I imagine they don't usually I don't think Peep would be hanging out with you in your room most of the time anyway. If you're even inside, the very rare times that you're inside, right?
Generally, he won't go somewhere that his friends can't go with him.
I see. Well, I guess the question is, the thing is they could probably wait right outside. Well, I guess we could make it that you managed to convince. I guess we'll put it this way. Let me ask you this question. How would you have convinced? The person is not the person who is sort of this local, not even really a lord as much of just as like a person who has a fairly large farm nearby, and so has a kind of the last homely house, if we were to jump out of game for a minute and imagine that from Elrond's point of view. So he has a home and basically a house that's available for people to come and drink and stay warm. And it is a particularly cold night today out. So assuming that you were given whatever would make you feel most comfortable, a bed of straw or something like that, and you wanted to be somewhat protected from some of the elements, I guess my question is, how would you convince him to let your 2 friends in? Because he's not necessarily opposed to it, other than just some of his other, the other people are a little bit like, why is there a wolf, in here? So is there a way that you might have been able to explain it to him, or, I don't know, barter something or do something to convince him to do this? Maybe we should start there.
One of the first things that he would make clear is that, Peep isn't going to go flitting around the room. He's just going to sit.
Right. Okay.
On his shoulder and that Ile will basically just sit under the table and curl up around Arilfa's feet,
Okay.
and like help keep them warm and whatnot. So they're not going to be, running all over the place.
In fact, a lot of people might not
And
even notice them, I suppose. Right?
and basically, it comes down to, if this guy wants his coin, they're coming too, or he'll
Okay.
go somewhere else.
Okay. So he pretty much agrees to that, and he just tells you to make sure that they're not, don't let the other patrons see them type of thing, because you get there early enough that there's not a lot of other people in the room. And so it is as you described. And as they are inside, just sort of sitting there, maybe Peep grabs a spare bit of, fish perhaps that you toss over or something like that.
Yeah, he does that, yeah.
Okay. There is a scope, which is SCOP, which is another word in this language for bard or for troubadour, or, something like that, someone who is a storyteller of the day. And a scope by the name of heroine. It's not heroin, it's heroin.
I was like, with an E?
Yeah, it's heroin.
No?
Yeah, it's here win is WYNN, is recounting the news of the day. And she comes to this point where she gives you the poem that I have described, a baleful and blasted kingdom, etc., etc., etc. And as she's speaking, Arilfa, you feel this kind of strange resonance, I think might be the way to put it, with some of the words that are being spoken. She speaks in particular about not just these creatures, but these the ogre lands and the three cruel ogre brothers who rule that land. And she describes not only the way that the humans are treated, but also the cruelty that the ogres possess to the animals. That in fact, in many of those places, they have almost not exactly raised it to the ground, but they have basically covered over a lot of it with farmland, and they've done all this other stuff to basically screw around with the natural state of the land in which they found it. And that means that there have been a lot of creatures that have been cruelly used under the yoke of these three ogre brothers since the death of the king. That king was apparently a kindly old man who was well known. Actually, the reason there were so many animals in that area of the world to begin with is because he very much loved animals, and he wanted them to be treated properly and so on. That is not the way these ogre brothers are, and they have basically used these things as pack beasts and slaves and things like that. And so she goes on about the cruelty of these creatures for a while, and then steps down, and the only thing she has not yet said is where the place is. She says it is the Ogre Lands. And if you ask her, she would at least be willing to tell you, that's all that she knows, the way you would generally sail to reach the place that is known as Etenaland, which is also known as the Ogre Lands, and how to sail to actually get there. But most of the people hearing this story sort of, smile and grin, and they do what people do in a bar when they're listening to music. They're like, oh, that's great. Yeah, that was fun. And then they go back to what they were talking about. But it seems like no one is taken on board that this doesn't sound like it's just a story. Like, it's for real. Like, I mean, someone is doing these terrible things to people and to animals, and no one seems to be standing up and saying, this can't happen. We need to do something different. And so she tells this story and then steps down and is sort of just quietly sitting by the fire. She has a small drum that she accompanied herself with, and she's now just looking into the fire as the rest of the people go about drinking and eating their food.
I almost said Eli. Eli doesn't do this. Arilfa does.
The guy's like, I said don't do that. Everyone's like, wolf.
If they were outside, he might be like, hey, go get her and bring her back over here. But then, so he kind of looks up at Pete for a minute, who's just looking around the room and just watching what's going on, and will occasionally look down at the plate with the little bits of fish that are left on it, and he'll kind of, nudge. Hand him a piece of fish.
Yep.
And whatever bread or other meats or along with their potatoes, vegetables, whatever.
Yep.
He will occasionally tuck one of those under the table and give it. He always shared, no matter how hungry he is, he always makes sure that they eat too.
Okay.
And so, they are his family. But he kind of breaks off a tiny piece of bread and kind of flings it at her
Okay.
to try to get her attention.
And she kind of bumps into her, and she's sort of a little startled because she was looking and then kind of looks over and it kind of just looks at you silently, like first seeing whether you were the one who did that.
And he's like, come sit over here.
And she stands up and she walks over and, yes, you always get people this way.
No.
And she nods. She says, well then, not the first time I've had something thrown at me. What do you wish?
And he's kind of, it's not that he doesn't understand. He's just, there's too many possibilities to what he's saying. And so he's like, he grabs the plate with the bread. He's like, what more?
And it's all right. What do you wish?
You spake of Ettins.
3 evil ones.
Where?
They're in Aitenland, the Ogre lands, over the sea.
And they are cruel to animals.
They are, the legends say, ones that have no care for any but themselves. And since the king died, they have treated all, oxen, horse, and even wild birds, with cruelty. They have servants, not friends.
Not right.
None have been willing to face them. They hear my story. I have told it in many places, and all either pay no attention or laugh and go back to their mead.
Not right.
She says, there is a boat. There is a boat down not far from here.
Many boats.
This one needs someone to take it somewhere. It is a boat that wishes to be gone. My friend is the captain. It was he who first told me this story, and he has seen the cruelty for himself. I have spread the story since he gave it to me, and she shrugs. He is no hero, he is no fighter, but he is a good sailor.
We will get you a new song. A kinder song.
She has these very intense green eyes, and she sort of fixes you with them, and she says, this song, will it be a song of victory or a dirge for the dead?
Could be either. Could be both. If it is a sad song for me, for us, you will likely never learn it.
And she nods slowly and she says, it is worth the risk for you then to do the deed that would provide this song?
Yeah.
And she nods and she says, in the morning, meet me at the docks. I will be waiting for you, and I will introduce you to my friend. And she stands, and as she's walking away, she, from somewhere in her pocket, tosses a larger hunk of bread, which lands on, like, right underneath Peep's beak, and Peep is like, like, looks over at you, but it's like, 3 times the size of what you've been feeding him so far.
Yeah.
Are these both, by the way, are these both males? I should have asked that.
Peep is female.
Oh, okay, sorry. So under Peep, so she looks at you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so he basically takes it off of it because she's perched on his shoulder.
Yep. So, like,
And
next
so
to the,
he
like,
just-
down on the table, yeah.
Right, he just moves the bread back over to the plate that has the rest of his bread on it and doesn't give it to her because bread is not good for birds, so why would he give it to her?
Mm-hmm.
He just gives her another piece of fish off the plate.
Okay. That's fair. So, okay. So, when the next morning arrives, you have a strange dream, Arilfer, and it's this dream that is going to provide us our portent. Now, last week when we did this, it was the Runesild's follower Rickmod that did this. But frankly, neither Ile or Peep are well suited to be giving portents of this nature.
Not.
They're not.
I mean, he can speak to them, so they could.
Well,
but,
yeah. I mean, they could sort of. I suppose you could put all this together. So we are going to put together these portents. And we're going to be doing this for each of the ones that we need here. So let me just make sure that we have got.
This is where I'm going to get really damn lost. So
that's no problem. We will work this out together. So
you'll work it out, and I will sit here staring dumbfounded at you.
Okay.
Just like I did.
Just like you did last time.
Was
Okay.
working on it.
So here's the way the portent works, chat. The way this works is these are a combination, and there's a table that we use to determine this. You may remember from last week. Hello, Deserted GM. That's a good name. I hope you haven't been deserted by your players, though, but welcome. Okay, so we have a follower pool. And this actually came into play in last session because we needed to use some of those inspirations to help as Runesild was doing her investigation. So we have the same thing here for Trend's character. And there are 3 separate pools. I am indeed playing Beowulf with my dear friend Trend here. So there are 3 pools here. One of them is the follower pool. One of them is the GM pool. That's for me. And one of them is the hero pool. Blue, red, and green. That will become notable as we put together this portent. So the way the portent works is this is the dream that we possess, and we'll explain how this works. So the first thing you're going to do is you are going to roll 1d4. So you're going to roll 1d4 for me, please, Trent. And that's going to tell us what the first half of the portent says.
Helps if I put a space in there.
I have my dice roller up, I think.
I would like to make a prediction that all of these are going to the GM.
Okay, we shall see.
1.
We begin with a 1. Okay. Well, that doesn't actually do anything yet other than just like tell us what it is. So this
Just
is an
watch.
Adjective.
No, 1 is a number, not an adjective. One.
Look, all right.
You're a professor of literature.
Listen, you.
Know that.
So adjective is what this corresponds to. So now what that means is that the first part of the couplet that is going to determine the portent is going to be 2 adjectives. And so now what I'm going to ask for is, and this becomes important because of the numbers that are rolled as well, because that helps determine the challenge. So, all right, adjective. So what we need you to do then, please, for me, Arilfer, is I would like you to roll 1d6 and then a second 1d6. So one at a time. And we're going to do this on our adjectives table.
1.
We have 1, okay.
1.
Wow. Forgotten. Interesting. Let me see. Can you do the same one? I think you probably can. It looks like you can. Okay. So, right. Forgotten. Forgotten. Boy, that's ominous. Okay. Both of those are red. So, Trent is indeed correct that these first ones, anyway, went both to me. So, we have 2 inspirations going to the GM. All right. So, forgotten was 1, 1. But that's only the first part of the couplet. Now we have to do, or the first for the portent. Now we have to do the second part of the portent. So now we're going to roll 1d4 again to see what the second half is composed of. Yep, Tari rolled doubles, but not the ones, I don't think.
2.
2. Okay. That is an adjective noun. Okay. So now I'm going to ask you to roll. Let's see. You know what? I'm sorry, Trent. I made a mistake. So the forgotten is correct, but all that basically means is you rolled 1 and 1, which means forgotten. So that was the first word, was forgotten. We have to roll the second time on that table with 2d6 because we're using it to cross-reference this number. So I apologize. So please roll 2d6 again, one at a time for the second word. It's not forgotten. It was just showing me forgotten, the first word. So this is for the second word of that first half of the portent.
So does this mean that if somebody just keeps rolling a 1 after a 1 after 1,
it would just be forgotten. Yeah.
And you would have to keep rolling until you got something different.
Well, I don't know about that. No, I think I would just play with it being, there's a lot of forgottens in your future. But yeah. So, but I made a mistake because I forgot that was all only for the first word. So still second word for the first part of the portent. And so a 1d6 followed by a 1d6 again. Yeah.
1.
Yeah, oh geez.
2.
Okay. So sorrowful. So I apologize. 1, 2. Sorrowful. Okay. So it is not forgotten. It is sorrowful. That is still, however, 2 inspiration for me total. So it's still there. Okay. So the first part of the portent is forgotten, sorrowful. The matrix of 36 words. That is. Yes, that's correct. It's 6 by 6. Yeah, that's right. Oh, very nice, Deserted. Yeah, have you been playing this yourself, Deserted GM? I'm a big fan so far. It's been a lot of fun. Okay, so 1-1 is forgotten, 1-2 is sorrowful. Great. Now we're going to do the thing that I was asking you to do with the 1d4. So this is now the second half of the portent.
We're going to re-roll the 1d4.
Oh, yeah, you have the adjective noun. Now we'll keep that because we have that already. Okay, adjective noun. So now we are rolling the 1d6 for this part of the portent.
Okay.
So 1d6. This is on the adjective thing, okay.
1.
Okay, so that is high.
Hey, well, that's cool, man.
Everything's forgotten and sorrowful, man. All right, high. That is yet another.
You mean like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly. That is yet another one for me, by the way, which is pretty amazing. Now we get to noun. So now we're writing on the noun table. And again, 2d6. So 1d6 and then 1d6. Oh, you haven't played it yourself. It's good stuff.
3.
Yep.
1.
Jeez, Trent. This prediction of yours, this is your fault. You have no one to blame for yourself. Okay.
No.
I know you love this stuff.
Much like you often say, I'm the messenger. Okay, this is not my fault. I'm simply the messenger. Okay,
so that meant that we got a total of 4 inspiration for me, and no inspirations for you, which is not an easy.
Excellent.
Trick. Okay, so there we go. So
I was really starting to worry that I was not typing that command in properly because it is just 1, 1, 1, 1.
I know. I was starting to go. If it happened again, I would have been like, "Wait a minute, what?" And you know.
Then the 2 and the 3 came up and I was like, oh, okay.
So it is forgotten, sorrowful, high boast, which I think is interesting. That high boast thing is interesting. Yeah, which of the luck deities did you piss off? I know, right?
All of them.
All of them at once. Okay. Forgotten, sorrowful, high, and boast. Now, the reason the portent is going to matter is that it is going to affect the challenges that we ultimately face in this journey. So we're going to have a couple of challenges that will be associated with this as we go through this. But the way that this functions narratively is when you are asleep, Arilfer, you have a dream in which you find yourself staring. You were standing on the deck of a ship, and you, as the waves go up and down, it's very odd because the boat is rolling, but you yourself feel very steady. You're just sort of moving up and down with the waves, but not sort of falling over or anything else. But you were looking at a golden, glinting light in the distance. And despite the fact that everything around you was gray and all of the, it's foggy and wet, and the wind has gone wild in the waves, as they say. Despite all of that, as you are staring forward, you can still see this one glinting light ahead of you. And as you stare at the light, you find yourself being sort of inexorably, in a dreamlike way, drawn towards the light. Again, staying stable the whole time. So the ship is almost like as if it's rolling up and down, but it's just still moving without having to move the prow towards it or its sails. It just moves directly towards the light. And as it gets brighter and brighter and brighter, you see yourself looking eventually at a stone-filled beach leading to a sort of rocky island that you're staring at. And on the top of this rocky island is this small tube. You couldn't really call it a tower. Really a kind of a lighthouse might be the better way to describe it. The light of which is coming from it. And there are 3 figures standing in front of the lighthouse. As you stare at them, you can see that one is younger than the others. You would guess, at least they're shorter than the others. One of them is young. One of them is, you can't really make it out, but presumably just sort of middle-aged, like nothing particularly that stands out. And one who is older. And on the brow of the oldest man, there is a gold glinting. Something is glinting gold as the light above, because they're standing in front of the lighthouse, is glinting. Something on his brow, maybe a crown or a circlet of some kind. And even as you speak, you see them all 3 at once gesture towards you. And then you find yourself awake in the gray light of morning. And actually, you were probably woken first by what feels like a kind of sort of rough something is rubbing at your hand, and then you see Ela is licking your hand, basically, as you are slumbering there.
Whenever we sleep, typically what will happen is Arilfer will kind of nestle back into a corner or up against a wall a little bit, slightly propped up, and he will take his cloak, which is somewhat unusually large, and he will Ile will basically lay between his legs and partly up onto his stomach.
Okay.
And just kind of lay that so that they are sharing warmth back and forth.
Okay.
And then he'll put his arm across his chest with Peep, standing on top of it, and he will throw his cloak over all of them and pull his hood down. And if it's like really bad rain, he'll put his shield over the top of that, so it just washes off. But if they're in a room or like a barn somewhere, it's not
basically a barn.
Rainy. So the shield would be next to it. But he basically just kind of uncovers Ile and Peep, sort of pulls her feathers back in because she was all puffed up and comfortable looking and everything, just like the way she gets when she's very comfortable and feeling secure. And so with everybody kind of up and awake, it's like, okay, all right, it's time to go get food. And so how close are we to the shore?
You are probably pretty close here, I would say. Maybe 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk to where the docks are.
Right. So definitely not that far. So I keep wanting to say Ile. No, that's not me. Realver is kind of looks at Peep and points out towards the dock and just says, "Eat," and gives her a toss, and she just sails out across the water to find herself a fish or so. But she knows where he's going to be. Because he pointed to where he was, and then he and Ile grab some meat bites or so.
You have some left over from last night, so that's fine.
Yeah, and he also grabs from the inn, tavern, hall, whatever. He grabs a firkin of mead, which is a very small barrel, holds about what is it, 8 liters, I think. Let me double check that. It might be more. It is 30 liters.
30 liters. Okay.
But it's still something you can carry on your shoulder.
Okay. So you have that. You have your shield slung around your back. You have your stick in your other hand. Okay. And you're able to make your way down. And Deserted GM suggests that the Dream people were asking you to RSVP for the next get together.
Right.
So
I thought he was describing the Stygian witches. I was like, oh, wait, no, this isn't Greece. What are you doing?
That's not the way to work this. Okay. So you make your way down. It is a very sort of bitingly cold, not because of the temperatures as much as because of the wind that whips through your skin, and the moisture, right? And the spray from the sea. And it's a sort of it's a morning in which the gray, the sky above sort of sets off the clarity of the water so that it's actually not really foggy. When you get down close to the shore, you can see fairly well into the distance, and the water definitely looks agitated. It does not look like a full-blown storm, but it definitely looks agitated. As Tari and I were talking about last week, good luck finding a place in the North Sea-ish in that area that's not agitated water, right? But you come down and you can see your contact from last night, Herwin, is waiting by one of the boats, and it is it's a long ship that has about you would guess maybe 20 people, something like that, for the crew that are there. Longship is maybe, being a little bit generous, but it looks weathered and kind of, beaten up. But it also looks like one of those ships that, like, old sort of mariners would sometimes say that you've got the two kinds of ships: the one that looks spectacular in dry dock and just sort of floating by the docks and then sink the minute that they get outside of the docks, and then ones that have been through hell and back and are able to still float, shows you that they're going to be around for a while, right? And this seems to be the latter category. It seems to have lasted for a good long time. Yeah, go ahead.
There was a one of the Star Trek video games. It might have been Starfleet Academy. It was back in like the 90s or so. And Shatner was in several of the cinematics on a thing. And he was giving a speech about, these different kinds of ships. He said, some ships are brand new, straight off the lot, and they're constantly breaking down. Other ships are 100 years old, and it shakes like a rattle. But she's never going to fail you.
Yeah.
And exactly.
This is definitely in that group for sure.
That's why she's 100 years old.
In fact, I want you to tell me, Trent. So last week, Runesild's ship was known as the Otter, and I would like you to tell me, as we come up to that ship, what do you think? What do you see as the figurehead of this ship? What do you think the name of the ship is? I'll tell you the name of the captain and all that, but what do you think the name of the ship and the figurehead might be?
A game that I know you played because it was one of the ones that I had recommended, Toonstruck. Something Deserted GM just said reminded me of the Shamrock barkeep in the bar. Away we are!
That's right.
Sorry, just threw me. I was like, wait a minute, I know that sound. Oh, the poor little bugger. Anyway, it's go play Toonstruck. Not right now, but afterward. Anyway, the boat. She is known as the Strong Tree.
The Strong Tree. That's one word, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mostly because whoever made her with as few pieces of wood as possible.
Ah,
So she had to be made from very tall, very long, very broad
yep,
trees.
yep. What do we have a figure? Like, what kind of figurehead would it have?
The figurehead um, is unusually beautiful for a ship that's, you know, uh, not one of the glittering ones that's in dry dock.
Right.
It is smaller than normal, but it is like a almost like a cornucopia of oak leaves that
Oh,
are opening
okay.
with a stag head in the center.
Stag head center. Carved stag head.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, not a real one.
And that also looks just as old. I was
Yeah.
gonna say, you're like, oh, here's my friend. The captain's like, welcome. No,
We need some bait. Let me just pick a piece off this. That'll work.
looks like Renfield. And welcome to the show.
Oh,
No.
yes, yes.
No. Okay, so yeah, so you see the strong tree, and it is, there sort of bobbing up and down on the waves. But in the nature of ships that that have sort of sort of stood the test of time, there's kind of a calm even about the ship. They don't bob crazily about because they're loaded down with ballast enough that they'll ride steady in the water. But that sort of thing. And the person who stands alongside Herwin is an interesting looking fellow. He has this incredibly dark black beard and hair, like just you would almost imagine it being almost like dyed black. And it's very much like scruffy and so on. And he has jammed a sort of a cap onto it, but sort of askew. And you're not sure if that's just because you wonder if that hat has ever been removed in the last 2 decades, right? Like it's one of those deals. And he sort of, it's almost impossible to tell exactly how old he is. He could be in his 40s. He could be in his 80s and well preserved, I guess, but probably
cut him
somewhere.
in half and count his rings.
Yeah, okay. Pretty much. Presumably middle-aged of some kind. Mm-hmm. And he's standing there, and Herwin, when she sees you, waves, and as you come over, she says, "This is what I told you, the man that I met last night. This is the captain of the strong tree, not the strong tea. That's another. He is the captain of the strong tree. His name is Karaelter." And Karaelter sort of nods to you, and he says, "She said you wish to cross the sea to the Ogre lands. Are you sure Aitenland is a destination you wish to go? It is very dangerous."
Yes.
And he looks back at his crew. He says, "Most on these docks would look at you and tell you that you are crazy and you should leave. Most would tell you that you are a fool."
And he starts to turn and then realizes he's still talking.
Yeah. He
Turns
says,
back, like,
"But I would not. I think that what is being done in that land is wrong. If you say you are a hero, then I and my crew will bring you, and you will help those people and the creatures there." Everything he says sounds like a statement, except that it's not like, do this. It's just sort of like, oh, and here's the reality of existence type of thing.
And the real person says, "I do not say."
He says, "You will try to help?"
Yes. I do not say I am a hero.
He looks at his crew, and his crew is this weird mishmash of people. Like they look like just sort of, if you could assemble like, all right, you have 2 arms. Like, why don't you come over and row? Like that sort of thing. They just seem like this mishmash of people, all different ages. And they're sort of looking over quietly in your direction. And Karaelter looks back to you and says, "These people, they must believe you are a hero. They will listen to me when I tell them to sail. But to go to Aitenland They must believe a hero will be with them. And he kind of like lifts his head as if to be like, I have spoken.
This is the way.
Yes.
And Arilfa kind of looks around. And
they're all looking at you, although they're not like staring. They're just sort of like waiting, you know.
Expectantly for
maybe
him to say whatever he's going to say.
Yeah.
So that they know what they're dealing with. Heroes upon return.
And he kind of lifts his head. He looks over at Herwin, and Herwin sort of nods, and she says, "It is as I told you. Speaks little, does not boast." And Coreltor nods and says, "You are not arrogant. That's good. But must believe in yourself, in your right. Must believe you can help those people, those creatures. If you believe," and he jerks his head over his shoulder, "then they will believe."
Would not be here if I did not.
He sort of like peers at you, like you get this weird thing where he's like looking at this and he's like, "Acceptable." And he turns and he says, "We should sail with the tide. Strongtree is a good ship. But if you wish to come, then come." He walks on the deck, and Herwin says, "Coreltor is man of few words, but is the best sailor in the Whale Road. He will get you to where you must go."
And he just walks onto the boat.
And she steps off, and as the crew makes ready to leave, she says, "I will wait here for your return, and for the song you have promised."
And he turns back towards the crew, and is like, "Hold!"
Okay, and they do.
And he has the thing on his shoulder, and he's like, "I'll bring cup."
Okay, and a couple sort of like look at each other, and then they, you know, one or two of them get up and they bring up a like a, you know, a mug, basically a wooden, all of them, and all of these are at their belts. Like they have one mug, like, you know, and so they bring it over, you know. Yeah.
It's like my ramen pot, which I don't have in here, but
you got to sling that on your belt,
I cook
man.
everything,
like,
yeah,
no, sure.
Like Samwise, it's like, it's right here.
Yeah.
Why do I need more than one container? I'm just going to eat it out of the pot. I'm the only one eating it, so what difference does it make? Anyway, so he basically fills everyone's cup from this barrel.
Okay.
And holds his cup up high.
And they do the same.
And he basically says, you know, "Freya, watch us."
And you hear most of them, a couple of them sort of nod. The rest of them are like enthusiastically, "Oh," and it's clearly, you know, some old ways people here. They're like, so they drink down, and you can see Coreltor at the prow of the ship, and he says, "It is well, enough drink, row." And they all like immediately, now you could tell that he's firm, but he doesn't like, you know, like scream at them. He just says something and they do it. Like, this is a crew that's been together obviously for a long time.
The difference between those who command respect and those who demand respect.
You got it. And so they start, and so the boat pushes out into the port, if you will, into the water beyond the docks. And as you sort of look back over your shoulder, Realfur, you can see just on the shore, you can see Herwin. And as you are sort of heading out into the water, you can see her pick up her drum and begin to play, and the sound of the rhythmic doof, doof, sort of passes to you over the water, and almost seems to fit with the rowing of the oars as you head into the sea.
He holds up his arm And if she thinks that he's waving at her, it becomes very clear very quickly that he's not, because Peep comes in and lands. And
it's good stuff. I love that image. All right, well, before we go on any further, let me welcome everybody who's watching Day 2 of Beowulf, Age of Heroes. I am joined by Trendane Sparks, the second of our two players. Tari Toons played last week with her own adventure for Runesild, which is called The Hermit's Sanctuary. This is called The Three Ogre Brothers, and Arilfer has just set off on his voyage to go there. If you like what you see in here, please do follow the channel. Please support us. You can sub to the channel, support the Patreon, join our YouTube with !ArvTube. I see we have a couple folks watching us on YouTube as well, so thank you. And please do spread the word about this show and this game by Handiwork Games. The art that you see is provided by either the folks from Handiwork Games or is provided by the amazing Tari Toons. So the image that you see of Arilfer right there has been done by our very own in-house artist of Tari Toons. So thank you all for being here as we continue. All right, so now no more tavern music for the moment. It is Waterworld. So let us fire up. Let's see.
Underrated film.
Yeah, the problem was I just kept looking at him being like, so it's Mad Max on the ocean with Dennis Hopper, which is fine, but like, I just kept being like, this was cooler when it was the Road Warrior. I don't know. That was my problem. Okay, and I've never seen The Postman, which I understand is another Kevin Costner post-apocalyptic something or other film, but I've never actually seen The Postman, so I don't know. Anyway, but we are telling the Beowulf story, so. All right, now it is time for...
No, we're telling the Arilfer story.
The Arilfer story within the inspired by the world of, yes. Okay, so now it is the time to face these challenges as the boat makes its way. Now, the way the challenges works, Chad, is that you'll remember before we had this portent, which was forgotten, sorrowful, high, and boast. And based upon that information that I get, that changes the way the challenges that we ultimately face here. And so there are two challenges that will be faced on this journey, which is what also Runesild had to face. As you are making your way along, for a number of hours, probably for the first, I would say almost much of the first day, there is very little that sort of hampers the ship. As I mentioned, there's pretty good there's pretty good visibility. Yes, the ocean is moving about, but it's not horrific, by North Sea standards. And the strong tree keeps to its course. Once they get far enough out that they're out of basically the sort of land encircled area, then they lift the sail, and the sail itself, this one large rectangular wide sail, fills with air, and the ship moves forward. The strong tree is not what you would call a particularly agile ship, as opposed to Tari's ship, I should say Runesild's ship, which is called the Otter. That is much more of a kind of agile type of thing, but it feels the waves more. This is much more like point A to point B, man. Like, there's waves, but so you feel very much at certain points Arilfer like a little bit like you were in the dream last night, where you're just going up and down and you're not really being rolled about, because this ship is surprisingly steady. Towards the evening, as you are moving along here, you can see that there are that there is a I guess the way I would describe it is you're looking out at the ocean beyond, and then you see that you hear this sound from behind you, and you hear one of the crew say, "I don't know what's wrong with it. It's just lying there." And they're making references to it. You don't know what it is, but if you turn around, you can see that Ela is lying on his side with his eyes closed, and you can see Peep is sort of perched on the ground really next to him, but is sort of like with Peep's head, she's sort of bumping Ela's body, but his eyes are closed. He seems to be breathing a little shallowly.
He doesn't like being on the water, so this doesn't really surprise me all that much.
Mm-hmm.
So, but still, I'll go over and check on him.
Okay. He so he is so he's sort of like lying there, and as you can tell that he's not like, in danger
He's
of
not
like,
seasick. Yeah.
right, but he seems very, like, you can tell his heart's like like faster than it should be. And he just seems like he barely lifts his head at your approach. Like when you pet him and sort of whisper in his ear. And Peep sort of continues to bump him and then sort of look up at you with those bright eyes of hers. But she seems particularly, like, she keeps looking down at Hila and then back up at you and then down again, in a sort of odd way, not the way you would normally have expected her to do that.
So the people standing around us do not understand a single word of what he says to Peep, but he turns to her and is like, "What is it?"
And so Peep, now I need to ask you this. So I know that Peep doesn't talk as such. How do you imagine Peep communicating?
Well, let me find the thing. I gotta open up my character sheet because I closed it and it's stupid stuff.
Right. I want to make sure I'm not doing like a caw, 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 caw. I didn't want to.
Right. No. Where is it? Is it under Remembered Secret? You have learned the language of beasts. So I could spend up to 10 minutes communicating with a friendly beast, which she would certainly be. Possibly learning something about the local area and what they have perceived in the last day or so, which I think this would cover. You might be able to persuade a beast to perform a small favor for you at the GM's discretion. So I imagine that even though she doesn't talk, they've been together enough that they, like I said earlier, they know each other's body language. They have a kind of a gestural shorthand for things.
Okay.
But if she has seen him either eat something or interact with something, like if he got stabbed or whatever, but I mean, perception, I mean, just looking at him, I think I would have known if he had been stabbed.
Yeah, no.
I would have picked up on that pretty quick.
No.
But she would find a way to basically tell me, focus on this.
Okay. So then what she does is she sort of kind of hops up, basically, like, she hops up on your wrist, if you'll allow it, like, more or less. And then kind of, sort of almost strains in one direction as you sort of go over.
And very much like a divining rod, wherever she kind of leans, he'll push his hand that direction so that she basically guides his hand to where it needs to go.
Okay. So she does that, and she comes over to the side of the boat, and you can see lying right on the other side of the railing, if you will, of the boat on the deck, is what looks like it's a dead fish, clearly, but it's an odd-looking thing. It's long and silver gray. That's not the odd part. What's odd is that it has, where the fins should be, these ridges that almost look vaguely spike-like, almost. And you can sort of see that the creature, it has this one big, bizarre, staring eye. It is a very odd and frankly disturbing looking fish. And the part of it, the sort of side of the fish, has been bitten into. And if you had to guess, you think that, and Peep sort of like, looks at that.
One of the guys is a werewolf, definitely.
Yeah, yes, exactly, right, no. But sort of looks at that and then looks back at Hila. So if you had to guess, this definitely looks like it looks like she, this is way more than she would have ever bitten out of a fish. She'd like little bits, right? Because of her beak. Yeah. This one looks like, type of thing. Which seems also odd for Hila. I mean, you could tell me, but that's not something Hila would normally do.
I was just about to say, he would have come to me and said, I'm hungry.
Yep, but didn't do that here.
Uh-huh.
And even as you look at it, actually make a, what kind of a check? Make a nature check for me, please, Arilfer.
Okay. 9.
Okay. It's a fish.
I know.
It's just, I mean, the one thing I'll say is, yeah, exactly. But again, it's just odd. It's slightly, you almost feel slightly vaguely nauseated even looking at it. It's weird. And a couple, there's one or two crew members that are sort of, like currently standing looking down, and you can hear them muttering to each other about ill omens and things like that.
And he looks back and forth at people. It's like, you know this?
And one of them says, they call it a gray sickness fish. A gray sickness this fish causes. But never seen one. Not a good sign. It's warped, changed. The gods are angry with us.
What cure?
And a couple of them look at each other, and one of them shrugs and says, some say good fresh fish. Some say connection, bond, love with other. In the wild, and he kind of waves at Ela, dead in hours.
And he goes back over to Elay and kind of leans down and is just running his hands across him, trying to get a better sense of how, oh my God, I've got like a round to fix this.
Medicine check for me. Let's see what we get. And I think for this one, I'm going to give you advantage because you know Elay particularly well.
Okay. Yeah, 15.
15. So, hi, Kel. What is this? This is Beowulf. You are watching a tabletop role-playing game 5e version known as Beowulf Age of Heroes, and I'm joined by Trendane Sparks, who is playing the player in this. It's a duet system, game master and player.
Game may or may not contain Beowulf.
Yeah, there may exactly. This is the Age of Heroes. This is one of the heroes, not necessarily the titular hero. We'll see. With a 15, so you can definitely tell that this is fairly recent. That Elay probably ate this fish, or bit into this fish. And you also know from what you saw from the fish that although it was a fairly good-sized fish, and although the side of it has been, bitten out, it's not like he didn't eat the whole fish. Like, he only had a relatively, for a wolf, even though he's a young wolf, small portion. So it means that he's not in imminent danger, but, you wouldn't want to wait 24 hours, to try to deal with this.
Okay. I'm going to, again, use the remembered secret feature. The aspect of it that says you touch a dying creature and invest enough of your own spirit into them that they become stable. And so he basically, grabs Elay and pulls him up into his lap and just...
Several of the crew are watching you do this also.
Closes his eyes and he starts muttering something, again, that they can't understand. But occasionally they probably hear the name Freyr.
Okay. Okay, two things happen. First, because you're using the remembered secret, this you notice that Elay's breathing grows sort of deeper and more regular, and you can sort of see the strange kind of almost shivering of its side and so on, of his side, kind of calms. And after probably a minute or two, Elay's eyes sort of flicker open, and he kind of lifts his head a bit, and starts licking your hand. And then there is a, "Oh, Freya!" like a "by Freya" exclamation. And as you kind of look over your shoulder, you can see that the fish on the deck has vanished, as if it was never there at all.
I was going to say, he was just about to point at the fish and say, no, eat.
Yeah. Gone. It's gone. In fact, not even the like little bits of it that were around it. And so there's some more muttering at this. But Peep sort of, perches back, like hops over, kind of nuzzles Ile for a moment and then hops up on your shoulder and looks around. And you hear from behind you, heals the sick. And the animals say yes. Who are we to say no? And there's a pause, and you kind of look around, and you can see the dark-haired, cap-askewed captain of Coreltor looking down at you, and he nods, and he says, all right. Seems to be a question.
Oh, okay. I was like, and what? He just...
Good. Health to the ship. And he kind of says to the crew, heroes, heal. And a couple of the crew, the muttering sort of stills, and a couple of people like nod and kind of look at each other, and they return to their position. Mechanically, this does something.
Just before they do that, just before they all go back.
You're like, drink more meat.
Almost.
Okay.
Almost. But he looks down at Ile, and he just sort of smiles, and in a human tongue, he says, next time, you drink too.
And Ile is like, kind of looks up at you. So there's a mechanical benefit to this, which is that you have been given a gift here for him. It's called determination. And what it means is that the first time that this follower would become spent, in our last week's session, there were a couple times where followers became spent, they can make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. And on a success, they remain unspent. Now,
don't they get that anyway?
No. When you are spent, when something spends the follower, then they're spent, unless there's a particular gift that a follower has that, like, for example, there are some followers that have that for a given thing. Like, if I, if I navigate the land or whatever, it's not spent if I roll blah, blah, blah. But this is a universal, okay? And the other reason that it's useful, something to think about, Arilfer, is that it's a temporary gift. And so at the end of the adventure, this will be removed unless you choose to make it a permanent gift. And one of the things you can do when we get to the whole leveling up stuff, which we'll do at the end of the adventure, is you might be able to decide to make a temporary gift a permanent one. So that's something to think about, but that's pretty nice. And it's only applies to Ile, but that's something that would not have happened necessarily without the Remembered Spirits.
And you said this is a DC what con?
DC 10, and it's Wisdom saving throw.
Right, Wisdom.
Yep. The first time they would become spent. That's only the first time, so you can't like keep using it over and over again, but still.
Got it.
Okay. Right. So that's the first challenge. And the next day, you know that you were told that it was about 2 days sail to get to this place, and so the next morning, things as you've sort of been set there, you are sort of looking out kind of at the land. Kind of at the water around you, excuse me. But you've noticed that the visibility has dropped considerably over the night. So now it's much harder to be able to see. The clouds have become more threatening, which always reminds me slightly of the Far Side cartoon where the guy's sitting in his boat and the caption reads, "Understanding only German, Fritz did not realize the clouds had become threatening." And the clouds themselves spell out, "You want trouble, buddy? Well, you found it. You better not come towards any closer to us." Anyways, very funny. But you, as you were sort of on the sea here, feel the clouds, the wind whipping and so on. The ship is still steady, but the vision is considerably more restricted. And about middle of the day, there's a shout from the side of the boat. And as you look over the side of the boat, you can see looming out of this gray kind of fog that has surrounded the boat, this large ship, but it's a big ship, taller and wider and longer than the strong tree. And at first, Coreltor orders that the ship, stop, sails down, all that. And so they do. And you look for a while at this ship, and it looks to be like it might have been a kind of a warship or something that would have been the equivalent of it, but it seems completely deserted. In fact, you can see there are no sails on it. The wood, much of the wood looks rotten, although obviously not the hull. It's as if you're looking at this sort of hull of a ghost ship that kind of bobs up and down in the water. And again, the crew kind of mutters with each other, about ghost ships and dead omens and skeletons that sail and stuff like that. And Coreltor comes over to you, and he says, "I would give ship like this wide berth, but it is perhaps the case that the crew, they are disturbed by it. You could explore it if you wish, or we could leave it behind. It is strange to see out here on the sea, and strange is dangerous. I did not wish to sail past without asking what you would do."
And he is clearly trying to process.
You mean
what the guy
Arilfer?
says. Because, thank you.
Yeah. I was like, I bet Ile is trying to do that. Yeah.
Arilfer's trying to process what the guy said, because he doesn't think it's that strange to find a boat on the sea.
Mm.
It's why would you think this was strange?
Yeah. It seems to be the uncrewed part that's unnerving people.
He didn't say anything about that, though.
Yeah.
It was just this is not why we are here.
And he nods and he says, "That's true. But that ship has no crew. That is why my crew is nervous. We can sail past. That may be the best thing. Or you may decide to look for yourself. Tell them there is nothing wrong with it. They are afraid of omens, portents. But I do not know which is the best course. With you as a hero, things may change how we would interact with the ship." I think you would say deal, not interact.
Right.
Interact's probably not right.
If all leave this ship, it becomes feared?
If it's floating by itself, yes. Ships have crew. And you also can hear Arilfer, which is the sound of the creaking wood of this thing. It's made of a very dark wood as well.
Leave her.
And he nods and he says, "All right. Will you say something to the crew?" And he goes up to prepare to give orders to leave it behind.
Mm-hmm. And he kind of lumbers over to near the mast.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of looks back and forth along the crew and over towards the other ship. And for probably the first time that they've ever seen, he draws himself up taller, and kind of the chest comes out a bit more, and the head comes back, and he says, "This ship has no crew. She does not need ours. We go on. She can remain as she is. This ship needs you."
Okay. I would like you to make me a persuasion check, please.
Oh, goody.
My favorite.
Yeah, I get a plus nothing on this. 5.
So they're all kind of like nod, but you can tell that they are a little bit troubled, and the mood of the sort of crew as the ship is left behind has definitely turned darker. It seems to affect a lot of the people around you. It does not affect Ile, who seems, since your interaction with them seems to have been, toughened up a bit, I guess, for something like this. But it does seem to affect Peep, who seems to just be absorbing, in a way, kind of the crew's mood, I think we might say. So the effect of this is I need Peep to make a... I'm going to ask them to make a wisdom saving throw. Now, Tari and I figured out last week that followers have a 0 to everything. So basically, you're just doing a straight roll. So this is a DC 10 in this case, wisdom saving throw that you're trying to get. And don't forget, chat, inspirations are usable on these things. I'm not saying to use it now. I just wanted to make sure that we got that out there.
I was just about to click it, so...
Yeah, so if anyone wants to use an inspiration to help Peep, they can. Also, I love that quote, by the way, Triffid. Space life and sea life didn't breed timid people, but it bred people who would not go out of their way to pit themselves against forces they could not understand. That's good. That's a good one. Anyone? Any thoughts? Any possibilities?
Let's go let it know.
Okay.
Here we go. Ding! 13.
Okay. So, yeah, Peep seems uncertain, but you, both you, presumably, Arilfer, and also Ile, sort of almost kind of, nuzzle Peep a little bit. And you can tell that although the mood of the crew is dark, that Peep takes solace and strength from you, and so does not become... the burden they would have received is unnerved, which would have affected their ability to keep from being frightened. But they did not receive that.
Good, because he's about to ask her to go sit up on top of the mast and keep watch.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, she seems okay. So if you send her up to the watch, the mast, up to the mast of the ship, the day gets even darker, you would say, over the course of the day into the evening, and then obviously gets very dark. But even in the morning, it doesn't get that much brighter. And it is as you get closer and closer, the sea becomes rougher. And you can see that this is basically heading towards the evening of the third and final day. You should have already been there, or you should be close. And there are black clouds obscuring the already darkening sky. The whale road is about to become very dangerous, and you can tell that even the captain looks a little bit uncertain about what's going to happen next. And then you hear, "Gawp!" Actually, wait. "Gawp!" from above, and you can see that the cry of Peep, and a couple of the crew calls out as well, as finally we get some new pictures here. Because what you see is this.
Blagofkas! I hadn't done that in a long time.
I was going to say, I was waiting for when that was going to show up. There is a light. It is a bright beacon on a nearby island.
Over at the Frankenstein place?
I know, yeah, right? And it's that, well, the thing is, too, and it's the storm is getting worse and worse. Like those waves. I love this picture because those waves are like, Jesus Christ. But like, it is pretty bad. And the waves are getting worse even for the storm, for the strong tree. And the thing about this for you, Realfer, is this light feels very much like the light that you remember seeing in your dream. Very similar to it, although here, unlike your dream, you do feel moved about a bit more by the water than you did in the dream. But in any case, the go towards the light is how all good things begin. Yeah, right? Kareltor comes over to
Carolyn.
you. Exactly. Kareltor comes over to you and says, if we sail on, could be dangerous. That light may give us a chance. If we sail for that, could be safe from storm. What do you wish?
And I almost said Eli. No, that's not his name. A real verb again is sort of staring for a minute, like he's trying to process what the guy is saying,
Yeah.
and go to the light.
And he nods and he turns and gives out orders. And the crew, which seems very relieved at the prospect of getting to land, like, falls to with a will, as the saying goes. And what you notice is, Arilfer, that as the ship gets closer to the land, the storm calms. In fact, there is one moment where the ship is going towards the land, and because of a couple of billows, the ship is blown back a bit. And as the ship is blown back, the storm gets worse. The closer you get to the island, the rain lifts, the winds drop. You've never thought of anything like this before. Maybe it's just complete coincidence, but it seems very odd. And as you get closer and closer to them, the storm gets lighter and calmer until finally the waters are not crystal calm, but are certainly fairly calm as you are heading towards the island itself. And you can see, as you're heading towards the shore, this thing that's giving out the light. It is a bright lit stone structure. And even from your position, this is not a very big island, but you can see that even from your position on the shore, that the lighthouse basically here, this structure, which clearly is a lighthouse, has a rectangular main section with these sort of steeply angled wooden rafters that are supporting a roof made of some gray substance. You'd probably have to get closer to tell, but it could be like shale or stone or something like that, that's attached to a square tower. And the tower is actually a decent height, about 3 stories tall probably. And at the top of the tower is burning this beacon fire. It's clearly a lighthouse of some kind. And one of the crew says, "That may be a place of the new god." And you remember that this is one of the crew that did not toast to Freya when everybody else did. Could have been one of those newfangled church people,
Freyr.
What did I say?
Freya.
Oh, I kept saying Freya.
Freya.
Sorry, my bad. Freyr.
Freyr.
Beg your pardon. There is also
Different
a
god.
Freya. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry.
That's Thor's mother, but
Yeah, my bad.
this is
Freyr.
the brother who is
Yes, that's right. Sorry.
god of fertility.
Freyr, so yes. Also nods and kind of sort of seems like that's the right place to go. And so once you've landed at the shore, you are able to make fast the boat. Now you have a decision to make here, Arilfer, because you could just hang in the boat for the whole time and not leave, or you could go up to the lighthouse. And you could bring, if you're going to go up to the lighthouse, you could bring a couple of your followers. You could bring Ile and Peep with you, or you could leave one of them with the boat and take the other one. Or neither. You could leave both of them with the boat and just go yourself. But generally the tradition is you do go and talk to what might seem like civilized places when you arrive.
Yeah. And they always function as a unit, so all 3 of them are going to go.
Gotcha. Okay. And so Coreltor says that he will, he'll watch the ship. And so you walk up and over. It's very rough, rocky ground, also slippery because of the constant spray. So you have a little bit of a difficulty. Even Ile has a bit of difficulty, actually. Obviously, Peep is having no problems. But you, as you're walking along, have a little bit of difficulty. But as you get further away from the spray, it gets drier and a little bit easier to manage. And you find yourself eventually walking up sort of rocks. It almost feels like rough-hewn steps, but it's probably just the way that the rocks have been placed to get up to this structure. And underneath, there is a door leading into it, and there is light, which is spilling out from underneath the door, which leads into the structure, and the door is closed. The beacon light above.
Illuminating a doormat that says, "Go away."
Yes, it says, "Here there be dragons."
Well, okay, that's welcome. Yeah. What's it called? Arilford kind of glances at Peep and tilts his head towards the door to listen and kind of nudges his chin for her to do the same.
Okay. Let me have you make a perception check, and I'll have Peep make one as well. Again, for Peep, the perception is just going to be, unless they have some gift for this.
It does.
Okay.
Keen senses, sight and hearing.
Okay, great. So then that gives you advantage on the keen senses,
Mm-hmm.
does it? Okay, so yeah, perception for you at normal, and then for her at advantage.
Perception for me at normal is an 18.
Okay.
And perception for her would be a 10.
Okay. So she kind of like listens, and you feel like inside you can hear what sounds like inside you think you can hear a slight creaking. There might be some movement, but other than that, you hear no talking or whispered words or anything like that. Just a little bit of creaking of wood, which may be from the structure itself moving around, but that's it.
Then he uses the butt of his spear to just kind of knock on the door a couple of times.
Doof, doof, doof. Okay. Okay. So you don't get a response, but this time you do hear something. And there is you hear from inside. Actually, this music that we're playing right now actually is appropriate because you hear the sound of this. Sounds almost like a choir of people, a few people, singing these voices, and they seem to be high pitched, possibly feminine voices. That you hear inside singing, type of thing.
Or it could be the Vienna Boys Choir just a few years early.
That's too true. The early ancestors of the Vienna Boys. Yeah. But no one comes to answer the door, though. But that singing you hadn't heard before.
And he's just kind of... And did I notice any windows on the thing at all? Aside from...
Right, aside for the top one. Yeah, there are two, at least on this side of the building, there are two shuttered windows that are, easily on viewable level, but they're, as I said, shuttered. There may be windows on the side to the left and the right, you don't know, but just the wall that you're looking at is just the door and a shuttered window on either side.
Well, since those are shuttered, he's going to knock again a little bit more insistently, and this time most definitely not in rhythm with the singing.
Okay. So you're doof, 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 doof. Make a strength check for me, please.
Okay. This should go well, because he's got no strength whatsoever. Strength.
You said strength.
15.
Yes. Yes, so the noise, sort of the singing, as you're listening to it, the singing stops.
Wow, it did.
Yes. And there's sort of a moment's pause, and then the door opens, although you don't actually see anyone opening it. But it reveals the room inside. And inside, you can see that there are a series of rough-hewn stone benches. There are about a half a dozen on each side, 6 left, 6 right, and there's a walkway aligned with the door. So when you open the door, there's a walkway right down the middle between these sets of benches. And beyond the benches, there is on the other end of the room from where you are is an empty altar, is what it looks like. And there are alcoves carved into the wall behind it, and there are dozens of candles standing in each of those alcoves, each burning brightly. And along the walls of this room, you can see there are those, I mentioned the windows were shuttered. On the side walls, to your left and your right, are also shuttered windows from the inside, but they are very tall because this part of the building is fairly tall, and they are hand painted with some kind of scenes. You need to get closer to see them, but they seem to be scenes of something. You'd need to look to find closer. And the paint is fairly, but not faded. I mean, fairly bright, fairly robust. And there are 3 figures here as well. 2 of them are seated on one bench and the other on a different one. And they are facing the altar. And as the door opens, they stand up and they turn around and look at you. And here's where I'm going to bring a few new people into the mix. Okay. Let me get my VTTs up. Not those.
Vatita.
That is not the one. Got a million of these portrait packs. Okay.
Yeah, a realtor basically says, listen, our car broke down a while back. You have a phone you might use?
The master is happy to welcome you. There we go. That's what I'm...
You've arrived on a rather special night.
Exactly.
It's one of the master's affairs.
They look at you and they're like, I was doing the time warp. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. There's one.
Bah.
Here is the second one. Meh. they all say the same thing. Meh, meh, and meh. Okay. And this one. Okay. So, there are 3 of these. There are these 3 men that you can see. One of them is older, this man over here, and 2 of them are younger. And this one, the old one, they're all dressed in what look like warm furs. And this man, the older man, is wearing a golden circlet on his head. And they don't say anything. They look, fine. They don't seem to be like yelling at you or anything, but they seem to be waiting for you to speak or to approach or something. But they are both looking at you, or they are all, all 3 of them are looking at you this way.
So I was waiting for Desert GM to say patient, but he didn't. And it's back to where were you? Patient. So yeah, Arvan basically kind of looks down at the bottom of the door frame and looks at all of them and then toward the man with the circlet and says, "May I enter?"
And the old man sort of looks at you and says, "You may. Welcome to this place." Now, his voice is rich and warm, and his, despite his age, his voice is the strength of a younger man. Even when he speaks, you can see from his bearing as you address him, not unlike you yourself, a realtor, he stands up a little bit straighter. He carries himself a little taller than the other 2. And you are, he seems happy to welcome you.
And then, they walk in and he starts walking, proceeding up along the nave, towards them. And stops at a relatively, maybe the second set of pews back or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he just looks across the 3 of them. I dreamt you.
And they sort of, they don't say anything. You can tell that this guy on the right looks at you somewhat warily. He's kind of a little bit, these 2 are sitting next to each other. He's on the other pew. So he doesn't say anything. But this one says, you dreamt us. Well, then we seem to have been, what is the word, Father? We have been foretold. That is a pleasant thing. I had wondered once if I would ever be someone else's prophecy. And he smiles broadly. And his father says, yes, but I can see concern. Perhaps you worry that we are the ghosts of your dream, or phantasms.
And he starts to shake his head, and then pauses for a moment and looks back towards the door, which opened apparently by itself.
Yes.
And so he's like,
Yep.
he's like, no, I.
Yeah. Yep.
Are you?
Oh, is that it? You just say, "Are you?"
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you?
And the man says, the older man says, "We are not part of a dream. We are simple residents of this island, though there are few visitors here." And he looks over. "This is my son, Bernardus, and that my youngest, Cadaris. I am Bartus, and I am king." And the others, the sort of middle son, Bernardus, sort of nods and smiles and says, "That's right."
You keep the light.
"We do." This is Bernardus speaking. "It is important. The sea around here is wild, and many ships have found their final end upon the rocks, the dragon's teeth they call them around here. So we have kept the light. We wish for those to make their way safely past. You are not too far now from Atenland, and it is our wish that people who wish to go to that land can go safely."
My thanks.
And they nod, and he says, the middle son says, "You may speak to either of us if you wish. There is food and water here. You may have some. You may look around this room, such as it is, and when the storm passes, you may make your way away again if you so choose. We are here, and now so are you. So you may speak to us if you wish. Of course, it will take some time to speak to that one." And he looks over at Cadaris, who kind of is a little, still reticent. He says, "Cadaris is the shy one, but his eyes see much. Isn't that right, brother?" And the younger brother kind of just sort of looks back at him quietly.
What can you speak of Ettins?
Ettins, Bernardus says, and he kind of, he sort of nods slowly, and he says, "Well, that is a dangerous thing of which to speak." And so he sort of looks at his father, and his father sort of slowly shakes his head and says, "That is a tale that has some sadness within it. There are some who have sought to hear the story of the Aitons, and," he shrugs, "not all were worthy to do so. Why would you hear of these things?"
To learn.
He says, "But why? To learn so you may loot them? Kill them? Save them? Uplift them? What exactly would you learn? Specifically, why would you learn? I ask not to accuse, but simply to know.
That is why. To know. I cannot know whether to loot or kill or lift up if I do not know them.
And he nods slowly. And for the first time, you're able to see, Arilfer, now that you're talking more with Bartis, that he has a small silver cross around his neck. And you know that that is a symbol of this new church that has existed too. So I would like you to make, please, a perception check for me. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm wrong because the thing is wrong. That is a charisma check. That is not perception. That should be persuasion. Whoopsie. So persuasion. Is what we're looking for.
I was like, which one?
Yeah, sorry, persuasion. It says literally charisma and then perception in parentheses. That is not correct.
Doesn't really matter. I have a 0 in it anyway. So 4.
Yeah, he says, he kind of shakes his head, and he says, I must atone for my failures in life. I am too ashamed to speak further. What I did is what led to what now happens on Aedenland, and I have come here as my penance. You should look for the Ogre lands, and you should not speak to one such as me. Now he turns away. Two things. First of all, mechanically, you get you're going to get an inspiration point to the follower pool. So you now have 1 inspiration in the follower. The GM pool still has 2. Hero has 0. So he turns away. And Bernardus says, "This has been a difficult time for my father. It's been a difficult time for all of us, really. The ogres, well," and he sort of trails off. You get the impression, Arilfer, that you're not going to be able to take another run at Bartis, at least not yet. But the other 2 are still facing you. Maybe you can talk to them. You don't know. But, yeah.
Yeah, he still looks very, not confused, but puzzled.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the whole thing is puzzling. Yep. Yeah.
And so he's like, if the Ettins do ill to others, it is his fault?
And Bernardus says, when he is the king, that is the case. You see, and he pauses, he says, well, perhaps, and he points over to one of the shutters, one of the paintings, basically the scenes. It's the one that's on the left side of the wall, the left wall, the closest to the door that you came in. And he says, have a look, and perhaps I can help tell this story.
And he goes over to look at the window.
And you can see that this is a scene from some kind of story or parable. I would like you to make an investigation check for me, please.
Okay.
And I don't assume that either of your followers has the lore of King's Gift, right? I'm going to guess not. That's a big old no.
No, not
okay.
Human King, no. So
yes.
Wouldn't help that.
Different kind of kings.
10.
Okay. So this is, you are like struggling. It looks like you see a couple of big creatures, 3 of them, and you're like, you think those are ogres? But Bernardus fills in some of the gaps. You think you might have been able to get more details, but at least this gives you some basics from Bernardus, which is, Bernardus explains that there was once an Aetinus Sinning. He's an ogre king who had 3 sons, and the king ruled a great land after defeating the previous goodly human king in brutal battle. The mannish king and his sons stood no chance against the brutality of the giant king. Now the ogre king was old, but as you see there, and you can see like a second picture shows like this ogre with like an ill-fitting crown, kind of looking at two what are obviously like younger ogres, and you can see the big ogre has like a hand on his chin. And Bernardus goes on and says, the ogre king was old and had not named an heir, for his oldest was strong, but not brave or cunning. His middle child was brave, but not cunning or strong, and his youngest was cunning, but neither strong nor brave. He rued any choice. But he was lucky enough to have a dweoras, and that actually means dwarf in our tongue, as a servant, and he sent for the creature. And he points, and in the last sort of bottom panel, you can see a small creature, which you assume is a dwarf, hammering away at a weapon, it looks like, on this forge, or on this anvil, I should say, I'm sorry. So you can see this weapon being hammered out on an anvil. And that's as much as that shutter tells. And Bernardus says, but to say more would be to bring more sadness to my father, and I do not know that I wish to do that. And Bernardus kind of like sort of trails off. That's as much as you see on that shutter. Bernardus hasn't turned away from you yet, but
so Odile sort of kind of turns to face the other side of the church where the other windows are.
Yep.
And glances once back at Bernardus and just starts walking towards the windows on the other side.
Okay. Let me have you make an investigation check on this side. And chat, remember, if you wish to use inspirations, you can do so, but it has to happen before this roll happens. He unfortunately does not have an inspiration he can use for himself because he didn't get one in the pool. If I could figure out a way to assume that Ile is like nudging you towards like, but I can't obviously do that.
Look, this paint was made with beef tallow. That's gross.
This is just like the time. Yeah, no Sherlock wolves.
One of the things that he was actually going to say to Ile at one point with the captain when Realtor was looking kind of confused and processing everything, there was a point where he was going to turn to Ile and Peep and in the beast speech say, is he mimicking the way I'm talking? Is that what's going on here?
Is he making fun of me? Okay.
He doesn't seem like he's stupid. Why is he talking like this?
That's right.
I talk like this because I don't have a lot of practice with it, but I would imagine he has more.
And all of that you say by saying like grrr, and like that means all of those things just once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So looks like one is not forthcoming.
4.
A 4. Okay. So you're just like, I mean, you think you see what you can see on the shutter are 3 big creatures getting what look like 3 weapons or gifts or something from a smaller creature. But you don't know the details unless you were to try to ask one of the 3 sitting in the church here for clarification, or whatever this is, for clarification. But that's what you see.
And so he looks back at Bernardus.
That would be the middle son, if that's the one.
The one that I've been talking.
Yeah, Bernardus. Yep.
And he's like, he gives weapon.
And Bernardus sort of says, of a fashion. And he says, do you use weapons? And when? How do you use them? When do you use them? Do you use them to help or to hurt?
Now I've got a Richard Dreyfuss line from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead stuck in my head. Could hardly be one without the other.
Great movie. I mean, great play originally in the movie.
Yeah. And he just he unsheathes his sax and looks at it. And it's clear that he's trying to figure out how to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
And he sheathes it again, and he says, "It depends on who you are. You are a deer. It is to hurt if I am hunting. If you are family," and he points down at Ile, "it is to help if you are under threat."
He nods and he says, "Do you ever use it to deceive?"
No, why would one do that?
There are some who say they will fight for another, but when the time comes, they are nowhere to be found. I meant, when you pledge to help, will you do it and keep your word, no matter what?
Unless I am lied to first, yes.
Okay. Make a persuasion check, but you can do this at advantage.
Persuasion.
I think he's just still the stranger, Triffid. I don't think he's actually introduced himself yet.
10.
Okay.
Arilver does not spend a lot of time around people.
I know. Actually, 10 is barely enough. It's a good thing you got the advantage. Bernardus says, sort of tells a little bit, and he says, well, and he kind of sighs, and then he says, the dwarf that was there was used was Nori, the Clever, a great smith of magical weapons. He made a club for the Ogre sons. For the oldest, Magan, he made a club. For the middle, Bald, he made an axe. And for the youngest, Bregda, he made a sword. He told each of them, while your weapon is in your care, no other blade shall bite upon you, other than those of your brothers. Thus, Nori the Clever told the king, they must fight each other, for otherwise they would each be in danger. And he sort of pauses and he says, the Ogre King's frustration with his sons would thus be resolved, once the sons had proved themselves to him.
Proved themselves.
And he nods. Which one was worthy of being the next king of the next Ogre King? Yes.
Oh. And for one of those brief moments, it kind of becomes clear through his body language that he was thinking, that Arilfer was thinking, they're his sons. They are worthy of being his sons no matter what. He's their father. Why is he? Okay.
Not ogres.
Now he's caught up and he's understanding.
Bernardus says, but that is as much of the story as I know. Perhaps my younger brother might tell you more, but have a care, for he is not moved by the straightforward or by the strong. He is more interested in subtlety and diplomacy. Yes, brother? And Kadaris doesn't say anything, just kind of, looks at him and then kind of looks away. And Bernardus goes over to speak to his father.
And Arilfar steps over and is like, "You would teach me."
And Kadaris, who sort of looks at you warily, says, "That would depend on what you would wish to learn. Lessons can go adrift, and students can prove treacherous." You know, you mentioned before at the very beginning of this session, Trend, that a realfer has this tendency to kind of look, carefully from side to side just to get a sense. This guy is sort of like his eyes dart around a bunch. Now, I don't want to oversell that as he's just like, they're out coming to, I'm not talking about that, but he seems to be constantly measuring, scanning, type
Yeah,
of thing.
it's observation, not paranoia.
Yes. And very different from his brother or his father, really.
And he kind of turns to face toward the I presume that there are more than one window on the other side. It's probably an equal number of windows.
That's correct. Yeah, there's basically there's really one big one on the left. There are multiple windows, but there's one big scene on the left. There are two scenes on the right, and you've looked at one of them so far.
Okay. So Arilfar is kind of looking across the scene that he's just learned about, and is kind of looking at the new one, but doesn't dig into it too much. He's just kind of scanning generally.
Okay.
Kind of a high level.
Just a quick high level thing is just to say that you can see that this clearly there are fights going on in this scene, like battles.
And as he's looking it over, he slowly kind of turns back and is like, "Old tale?"
Kadaris says, "An old tale that's been told before, but a new tale in its latest telling. This is a story repeated many times."
"A new king."
"A usurper, actually."
And Eli picks up on the change in Arilfar's mannerisms as soon as he hears the word usurper. And Arilfar doesn't have hackles to raise, but he definitely knows what that word is and what the connotation of it is. And becoming aware of how Arilfar is reacting, Eli's hackles start to go up, and the muscles start to tense, and he looks up at Arilfar like, "Wait, are we fighting now? Is this it? Is this the moment? Are we fighting?" And eventually Arilfar kind of picks up just the slightest kind of chuff from him and looks down and just kind of, it's like, no, and just sort of rubs his hackles back down. It's okay. "And this ill is the cause of strife for people, humans."
And he nods slowly and he says, It is the cause of much suffering. If I were to tell you, I wonder what you would do with the knowledge. You said to my father and brother that you would try to help. I wonder if helping, what that means. Would you take down these creatures that you seek? Try to help the people that are being harmed? And then put yourself as the newest of the kings? Would you throw down a tyrant and become one? or would you simply throw them down?
And he kind of flinches when he's like, implies that a real fellow would become a king himself. There's just kind of this like, almost like he's about to gag.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, just, ugh. He's like, no. No. I want to help all. There must be balance for there to be peace.
I will take from you either an insight or a persuasion check, if any of that helps.
I'm pretty sure insight is probably a lot better.
I would assume.
Yeah, insight is much better than persuasion. So here we go. 21.
Okay. That's more like it.
Yeah.
Kadaris sort of like stares at you carefully, and you really have this uncomfortable feeling of like having your soul inspected, like kind of, and then he so, and he nods. He says, I see. Come, look at this picture that you are standing in front of. And he sort of points it out, and he says, this is the fight between the 3 ogre sons. Bald here, and he points to one of the ogres, who they're not, the drawings are nice, but they're not nice enough to be like super well detailed. But he points to one of them, and he says, Bald was the first act, challenging both his brothers to duels. But Bregda, the youngest, thought for a moment and said, it is unwise for us to fight. You might chance to beat me, for you are braver than me. But it is unlikely that you would chance to win against Magan, who is stronger than both of us. And then, too, one of us might slay him, either by boldness or cleverness. If you value your life, we should make a pact. And then, and he turns to you, and this says this almost in a snarl, then they slew their father, for pitting them against one another. And Nori, too, so that no one would know the secrets of their weapons. And you see a smile that at first you're like, what? And then you think it's more like a angry, sort of reactive, pulled back grin. And thus they did. Each ogre brother chose a land. The coastal fens for Bregda, the rolling middle lands for Magan, and the high mountains for Bald. And each claimed a portion of their father's servants to do with as their cruel hearts' desires. This is the story of the ogres, the Etons, as you called them, that have taken the land, and us here on this island, and one other, though she hides from us.
No one has spoke of another.
My sister. She is still free, hiding somewhere. She is gone from our eyes now, and we cannot reach her. Now, when he says we cannot reach her, both Bernardus and Bardus sort of turn back, and both of them, almost in unison, nod sorrowfully. This seems to be the first time that all 3 of them seem to be, you don't even need an insight check to tell, both reacting to the loss of their sister. This seems to be something which bothers all of them, but the sister is supposedly free somewhere, based on what he just said. Maybe Ogre Dad was trying to teach his kids to work together. Didn't work out too well, Triffid.
But well, yeah. It did. They just worked together to kill him.
Yeah, so, that's a good point. Yeah.
So success is Do you know where sister is?
And he says, no. And Bernardus says, she ran away, and that is why she is not here. And Bartus says, she has turned away from us. We wish we knew where she was. Kadaris says, but at least she is free, and free of our fate.
Why?
And they sort of like pause and all kind of look at each other. And they say, I think it would be probably Kadaris is the one who's closest, says, she chose her own path, a path which did not rely on ours. And she was right to do so. I hope that where she is, she will have found a measure of peace. She might help you if you found her. If there is anything to be said in the wisdom of someone who sees beyond his words. And he nods at you in kind of a vaguely approving way, Arilfa, maybe, like something about you has impressed him. And the other brother, Bernardus and Bartus, the father, kind of just are silent. You get the impression this is a sore subject.
Right. Well, Arilford kind of looks back up at the window, this is plural, and is like, she made these?
No. They were made. She... And he kind of trails off and looks at his brother and father and then says, she would want us to tell this story with these as help. There's a slight crackling of the deeds. Go ahead, sorry.
If I seek and I find her, and she does not wish to return, do you want me to tell you?
So Bartus and Bernardus kind of eyes both widen on both of them. And Kadaris sort of looks and gets this wry smile almost, and as he looks at his brother and father. And he says, if you were to tell us, I think we would all be thankful. And the others sort of like slowly nod. The father looks like you just said, like, seems stunned. And the eldest son, slightly less so. Only Kadaris seems to have seen through, or not seen through it, that's not the right word, seems to have understood the root of what you're saying, and reacts accordingly.
Then I will.
And Kadaris bows slightly, and he says, then, if you have further questions, you may ask us of other things in these lands. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay with us here. There are stone benches, there is food, there is mead. We are happy to share with any who come.
Men on the boat may wish to, some. There are some who are of this My belief is out there.
Kadaris nods, and Bartis says, "That is of no difficulty. All may come here if they wish."
I will tell them.
And the three nod. Okay.
Can there, knowing what you know, can there be a peace between them?
And Bartis sort of looks at Bernardus, and Bernardus sort of his jaws set, and kind of shakes his head a little bit and looks at Kadaris, and Kadaris says, "I doubt it. These brothers were convinced that they alone must be told to rule. The great irony that they have killed their father is that their father's spirit still haunts them, even if not in reality. The memory of what he wanted, for one to be the greatest above all, still remains with them. Could they be convinced to put this aside? I do not know. They are immensely powerful, and they have let arrogance consume them in that desire. Their cruelty has only increased. Get them to work with each other for a day, a week, but eventually, as is the way of those with this power, they will fall to fighting again, and the people and creatures beneath them will suffer the same way."
That is where I help.
And he nods and says, "Then you must do as you must. But there is little that can be done against them. I can tell you that the youngest, Bregda, he is the most clever, and it is likely he will try and trap you in the rules of hospitality instead of facing you head on. You should beware of all of them, and for him, beware of his wit. He is tricky."
As Loki.
And Kadaris smiles, revealing sort of brown and slightly broken teeth, and says, "Yes. Yes. A worthy comparison." And Bernardus and Bartis just kind of turn away.
I will to the ship. Some may come. All may come.
And Kadaris bows slightly, and if you make your way out and head back down to the ship, what do you say to the crew, which has been waiting? Nothing has disturbed them while they were here.
Right before he gets out through the door, he stops and turns back. "Oh. Arilfar."
And the one still looking at you, Kadaris, sort of nods and says, "You are welcome to this place, Arilfar, and friends," and kind of, nods at Ile. And
he smiles and he's like, "Peep, Ile."
And the two of them, and he kind of nods to both. Then his brothers and his father, both along with him, turn and sit back down on the pew. So when you go down to the ship, they're still there, and they're kind of like, yo, what up? Basically, they
He's
have
like,
been there the whole
dude,
time.
there's like these 4 undead dudes up there. They're like, bring ice people. No, he doesn't say that. It's a giant plant named Audrey too. You should totally go get it.
They all stare at you. What do you mean? But the captain is, I would say, the first one to sort of greet you, and Coreltor says, "It is a strange calm here, more than I would expect for this place. What of the lighthousekeeper up there?"
And over the course of the past 2 days or so, being on the boat, Arilfor has noted which people are of the church and which are of the old ways, and he basically, makes a point of catching the gaze of each one, and basically points and says, "They are of you, and they welcome,
kind of all like,
and they welcome all for shelter and food, should you wish to stay."
and the
night. Let's be clear on that. The night.
stay forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they all nod, and there are, I think, about 3 of them that are in the sort of the ones that did not originally drink and that were sort of the church category. And all 3 of them go with you. The rest of them, though, stay on the boat. And Coreltor says to you, "I should stay with the others, for they may become frightened in our absence. In the morning we should set out if the storm has passed."
Arilfor would have spoken to those who were remaining at
Right.
the boat and asked if there was anything in particular that they wanted, because he makes it clear that he's not going to stay up there.
Yeah, okay.
That just staying in places, human places, just not his thing.
Yeah.
But if they want anything, he will get it and bring it back to them.
Okay.
So, because he's going to come back down here.
Yeah, mostly what they just asked for, a couple inquire about, is there other kinds of food? I mean, the ship has stores as well of their own supply, but there's difference between, hardtack in a barrel and, fresh food type of thing. So if there's something like that, but otherwise they seem content so long. They seem actually somewhat relieved that you're going to be back staying with them. For what that's worth.
Yep.
So assuming you do that, the 3. So when they arrive up with you and the 3 others from the ship, the 3 others are all sort of like agog and at these the 3 figures inside this place, and they talk with them in whispered tones. You notice as they do so that Kadaris seems not very engaged with any of them. Bartus and Bernardus are very much like talking to them about what they've seen and portents and mysteries and the church and so on. And fish, yes. And Kadaris seems like not particularly interested one way or the other. There is, by the way, just as a note, this is not telling you to do this. This is just wanted to point out, I don't think I mentioned that there was a single door on the wall behind the altar, which presumably leads to the, the lighthouse tower, the beacon light burning above. I'm letting you know that just so that there's a way to get up to it if for some reason you wanted to, not because I'm saying you should go look there. I'm just saying it exists.
It's okay. I don't have to go pee right now, so everything's fine.
Okay, say again. You know what?
I don't have to go pee right now.
Okay, sounds good. Okay.
Actually, I do, but whatever.
So, so they go, and so they stay with them, and then you depart and head back down to the ship. And once back down on the ship, again, your sleep is fairly calm and untroubled, and in fact, the water around is fairly calm and untroubled in the same exact way. But you are woken actually not by the sort of light of morning, although it is in fact light when your eyes finally open, nor are you awoken by Elay and by Peep. You are awoken by the sounds of 3 voices. And as you kind of open your eyes, you can see that three of the three people that stayed up at the building are talking animatedly with Kareltor. And Kareltor sort of, "Are you sure?" And "We swear." And then they're sort of whispering. And Kareltor sort of looks over at you and then says to the three, "Well, you should tell him." And they go rushing over to you. And they say, our pardon, Arilfer, but you must come see. Come see up there." And the other one says, "Yes, it is. You should come."
Come see what?
The place, the chapel, the church.
And he's just still staring like he's waiting for an answer.
And one of them points. And when you look behind you, you can see that there is no tower anymore. It's not there. There is a building there, it looks like. But it is not the beacon light tower that you saw last night. And one of them says, It is gone. You should come see."
And as he's standing up and gathering his stuff, he's like, "I did not hear it break."
"No, neither did we. When we woke, and they're at this point, they're sort of like starting to make their way up the path.
Yeah.
So when we woke, there was no sign of the tower or the beacon light. And then as you go over the crest of the hill, one of them says, "Or the walls." And you can see that the entire building is gone except for some rubble and scorched bits of timber. And the same one that was talking says, "And the three men were gone too." And you can see, Arilfer, as you come up alongside it, that there is, as I said, a bunch of rubble and some scorched bits of timber on which you think you see faint signs of paint from the decorated shutters. But that's it. There is no sign of scorch marks on the land around. There is nothing around. Frankly, this is mostly just rock outcropping anyway. There is no trees or fuel. It's as if this thing existed, but not now. Because all you see now is rubble.
So he's going to go and very carefully, gingerly, touch the various scorched pieces to see if there's any remaining heat.
Cold.
At all.
Completely cold. And the paint is faded.
Helpful ghost.
"Were they ghosts then?" one of them says.
Don't know. But they were not wicked.
And the two of them look at each other nervously, and "There are dead ships and diseased fish and ghosts on this journey. Are you sure that we must go forward? Are these not signs to return?"
You stayed here with them. Did you feel welcome, helped, watched over, cared for?
Yes. Yes.
This is not the work of evil.
And they sort of look down at the shattered pieces of timber, and "We were led here by ghost light."
And cared for.
And as you say cared for, a billow of cloud rolls away, and you can see on the other side of the island, you can easily see the Aitenlands, the Ogre lands nearby. and you can see just the first side of the fens, Arilfer, the fens that are allegedly, if you understood the story properly, the ones belonging to Bregda. And beyond them, because you're a little bit higher on the island, you can see the grasslands, and beyond the grasslands, the slopes. And again, if you heard the story right, that's Bregda's, and then Magan's, and then Bald's in the back. And they look foreboding, but clearly visible in a way that was not. And the North Sea, the sea here, is as the Whale Road is as quiet as you can ever remember it.
Mm. He looks from that back to the men in the building, and then back to the men and says, "Count this as blessing."
You all kind of look at each other. If you remain with us till we arrive, then we will take this blessing.
I will.
And they all sort of bow their heads and they whisper something, perhaps a prayer or a Rilfer. And then they head down to the boat along with you.
Yep.
And I think as you leave the island, tell me quickly though if you do anything. I mean, there's just basically rocks now, so I don't know if there's anything you wanted to pick up from here. Okay, so when you leave to go the rest of the way, it is a simple business basically. To arrive, a simple business to kind of get where there is. And so as your ship sort of gradually sails in to the dock on the other side, it's a matter of maybe an hour's journey from here to get to what you saw on top of it. You see before you this. The fens of Bregda, and then again the grasslands and the mountains beyond, the slopes beyond. And as you get close to this, you can see that you have arrived here at a place. There's a scent and a smell, a kind of a sulfurous, swampy smell that you probably recognize, Arilfer. It's a place where people gather perhaps peat and low-lying moss and things like that. It is a kind of swampland. Definitely. Yes, and it's a kind of swampland here. And as the boat pulls up to the shore, the Kareltor says to you, "Now, you must follow. We will wait until you return. This is the Atenland, and it is your job now to help it somehow."
Keep safe your crew.
And he nods. Keep safe yourself and your friends.
My family.
Freyr, protect them. And as Arilfer first sets off into the fens, we'll bring our first session to a close.
Yay!
Ooh, that was delicious. Good stuff. We have a little bit of a ghost story for a January thing.
Yeah.
It's fun, Trend.
Halloween.
It's always
Halloween.
It's always Halloween.
Never
Halloween
take
somewhere.
the decorations down.
It's true. So I want to say one of the things that's been really cool about this for me is such a very, very different, like both mysterious because you're trying to resolve like what actually is happening and where, but this is very much more of a kind of like you had to like track out a story and figure out like, and so you got these ogre brothers and apparently they're cruel and they're also like some rock, paper, scissors weird thing going on and like all this stuff. Yeah. So there's a lot of that stuff to kind of figure out. And I loved the idea that you were talking with that Arilfer was talking with these three guys and trying to figure out how to sort of process it with all of them. And again, as we always talk about the dice and the narrative, the first two you kind of struck out with, sort more or less. I mean, whatever. It was the third one, the one that was sort of about wile and care or whatever, that seemed to kind of click somewhat, and then allowed you to sort of speak with him and the rest of them. And I love the moment about the whole thing, like, if I find the sister, should I come tell you, and all that. That was really, really great stuff. The image of you sort of like standing there in the rubble and sort of saying, like, did they help you? Then this is what we needed here, was really cool. There were some leadership aspects to a real fur, as quiet as he is and sort of straightforward as he is, that kind of came through here. Also, I got a chance to pull out a little bit of my inner Dredge with the weirdo fish that you were able to do there. So, which was a lot of fun. How did you feel about this, Trend, going through this for the first time? Well done, first of all, good work. But how did you feel?
I very much enjoyed this. Not nearly as soul rending as I was afraid it was going to be, but then we haven't had a lot of game mechanics at play.
Not yet.
That are unusual, outside of my realm of D&D.
Right.
The freakish dice rolls, one.
Oh my God! I was like,
one,
dude,
2, 3, 1. There was a point where, because remember when we're playing Eberron or whatever, and I mouse over whatever the number was that was rolled, and it breaks down what numbers was rolled and whatever bonuses there were and everything. I tried doing that with this, and I was like 1, and it just said 1d20. I'm like, no, or 1d6 or 1d4 or whatever, and I was like, no, you have to tell me what. I can't tell if you actually rolled something or if you just put a 1 there. It wasn't until the 2 came up that I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, now I know that it's not. Yes, exactly. Because it was like for a second, at certain point, which is why I got confused about what was what part of the portent, because it was like 1, 1, 1. I'm like, wait, what? So I had to kind of like process that in my head. Yeah, that's definitely true. Anything surprise you about a real fur, like as you played him?
I knew that his mode of speech was going to be challenging for me, because I'm not used to playing a character who doesn't talk well, for the most part. I mean, I knew that he's not dumb. He just doesn't get a lot of practice talking to humans. And so it's like, if you were to go, a really good example of this is a Stargate SG-1 episode called The Torment of Tantalus, where they find a guy who's been by himself for like 40 years.
Okay.
And when they meet him, he's not real good at assembling sentences anymore.
Yeah, sure.
And he's like trying to point out things, and he's like, he points at like a bunch of hash marks. He's like, last day, and Daniel's like, it's a calendar, and he puts it together and figures out what Ernest is talking about.
Right.
But I was like, that's kind of where I want to go with this. But he has enough interaction with humans that the more he talks to them, he gets into the rhythm of it more quickly.
Yep.
And so that was the for me, that was the biggest challenge of playing him so far.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I think the interesting thing is that I love the idea that, he's kind of like, well, I'll be a hero on my return, like, if I'm going to do that. Like, that's obviously not why he's doing any of this. He's doing this to help. But it's a lot of it, and this is the thing, it's funny, because my semester begins on Thursday, and I'm teaching fantasy fiction this semester, and I always begin with Beowulf, which is the kind of the text for Western fantasy in particular. And the thing about the formal boast, and the thing about the sort of heroic, is that, like, okay, so Beowulf is a guy who believes his own press clippings. Sure, he's arrogant, he's prideful beyond belief, whatever. But part of this is he's trying to inspire people that are like, we're done. Like, like Grendel has ripped apart the best warriors in the land for years. Like, this isn't something that's happened for a couple of weeks. Like, basically every week he's just like, rip, take people, kill them. They can't do anything about it. Like, these people have been beaten down and despairing. And so what Beowulf is doing, which is what the poet the poets, really plural probably, who wrote Beowulf were doing orally, was trying to inspire their listeners who were also in a dark sort of time. And that was what it was interesting to me about watching a Realfer go through this, is that obviously a Realfer isn't just like, yeah, I got this. Like Runesild, that frankly is a lot more, no problem, buddy. Runesild is,
love her so much.
She's so fun and so different from a Realfer. That's what I really like about it, is very different. And yet a Realfer can't just be like, whatever, they'll do what I tell them. They can't be taciturn completely, or they're not going to, they'll just give up, right? Like he has to inspire. So I like the way that he inspired, that idea of sort of rising up to that level while still being a Realfer. Like he's not going to be like, friends, there may be a day. Like, he's not going to give the Aragorn, Return of the King speech, but he definitely is able to lead. But it was interesting to me seeing him take on more of the mantle. I know it's not super comfortable for him, but it felt like he was taking on more of the mantle as he had to, I guess, as time went on. So that was interesting. Plus, I can't wait to see more of what happens with Ile and Peep. Every time I get something about a follower must debate about their faith, and I'm like, that's going to be a fascinating yeah, exactly. I believe. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to see what we get up to next month. Because Chad, if you do not know, thank you, Deserted GM, I am using Seamus Heaney's translation, which I still think is one of the best because it's the most poetic. Although Maria Devana Headley's, a lot of people know that as the most modern translation. She's wrote a foreword for this Beowulf Age of Heroes. She's the one who starts, instead of listen, she starts with bro, which is also kind of funny.
I presume that Seamus is Scottish.
Seamus Heaney, yeah. No, Irish, not Scottish.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, S-E-A.
Still, he should start with oi!
Oi! He's great. Some people think that he messed around with the poetry too much, and they call it the Shameless Heaney translation. Ooh. And I'm just like, look, man, whatever. Like, it's the true poetic version of it. But it's a really good one for this, because you really get the flow and the feel of it. But anyway, so for those of you who don't know, we do 2 of these a month. One of them with Tari, one of them with Tren. And so the next one we do, we'll figure that out back channel, but we'll either be Tren or Tari continuing their story, and then we'll go back to the other adventures. So the scene will shift now. If we stay with Tren's story for one more, then it'll shift to Tari, or it'll shift next back to Runesild's story in the Hermit Sanctuary, which is in another part of the Whale Road. Yeah. I also like the way that this game sort of conveys travel mechanics, the idea of the sense of journeying across the water, which has some similarities with the journey rules in Middle-earth, but does it in a little bit more of a definite way. And I love the fact that it's determined on my end by the portent numbers which Tren rolled for a Realfer. So those had a direct effect on what I actually was presenting for them, which I think is cool. The Glaswegian translation starts, "Oi you, oi you," exactly. Oh man,
Glaswegian is an amazing accent. Is it right? I mean,
dialect. I guess.
Let's go with dialect. It's probably damn near another language.
Yeah. Super cool. So good stuff, Tren. Where will the lovely folks see you next? Before here, I mean, this particular campaign. Where will they see you next?
Here.
That's true, but not this campaign.
Not this campaign, though. No, we'll be on Saturday, this coming Saturday, for our next session of Eberron.
Oracle of War. Yeah.
Ooh, stuff's gotten.
Man, the last time we left Tantan, he's like clawing at the ground outside of this thing.
Trying to get off a merry-go-round.
Yep. We're in season 4 of that. My Undying Heart is the name of this part of it. So yeah.
Aside from that, there is the audiobook, which we just released recently.
Yes.
Titled Inner Space and Outer Thoughts.
Do you know how that's doing? Like, are you able to tell, like, any about
Not much. There's a friend of mine who used to live here and then moved to New York and is now in Florida. And he basically runs an exotic car rental company. Okay. But he was at Caltech. So when I told him that I'm narrating this anthology of short stories from Caltech and JPL authors, he's like, wait a minute, what? I'm like, yeah, here. And so he's been listening to it during his workouts. And I think it was last night or the night before, he messaged me saying, oh, by the way, you might want to tell the people who made the thing that Death Muse sort of cuts off at like 2 minutes or at 23 minutes and something. And I'm like, shouldn't it? And I went and I checked the thing. I'm like, nope, my copy is 29 minutes long.
Oh.
Uh-oh. And so I'm like, hey, guys.
We have to fix this. I went over to the link for it. First of all, thank you, Effect Life, for gifting a sub to Deserted GM. Thank you so much, Effect Life. That's very kind of you. Thank you, and welcome to the Arvanauts, Deserted GM. I think you should hang out with us because it seems like you fit right in. So thank you so much for that, Effect Life. The other thing I was going to say was, Trent, I'm looking at the Inner Space and Outer Thoughts like Kindle edition page, and there's a paperback page, but I'm not seeing the Audible edition, and I don't know.
Right, it isn't on Audible, and I don't know why.
Oh.
Pretty much everywhere else you would get an audiobook, it's there. I don't know why it's not on Audible yet. I would guess it's because it takes longer to get through Audible's gauntlet of verification, would be my guess. And that everywhere else was like, yeah, we listened to it, it's fine. Or whatever. I don't honestly know why it hasn't released on Audible yet, but all the other places it's out.
Audio book. Okay. There we go.
Grab the...
Oh, I see. And it actually can go right off of Caltech anyway, it looks like. Because they have that. Pre-order the book today through Libro FM to support your local bookstore. Definitely you should do that. Copy, paste. There we go.
Yeah.
You lurked for the LOTR starter, so definitely be back for more Beowulf. Right, nice, very nice. Yeah, we'd love to have that. And thank you again, Effect Life. So there you go. That's the link to what Tren was just talking about, Inner Space and Outer Thoughts, which is narrated by Tren and a cadre, assemblage of tremendous other voice actors, including KP from the Vocalist and other folks like that. So yeah, good stuff. Cool. Yeah, I'm very happy that you got. I'm happy for you, my friend, that you got that done, because I know that was there, hanging out there.
It was a stone around my neck for a while. It was because every time I thought I was done, they're like, "Oh, could you do this part too?" I'm like, no. Okay, fine, yes.
Now they're like, "All right, can you add more?" No. But Trent is also the maker of the narrator behind the audiobook of Greyshade. So if you are interested in checking that out, which is my Grey Assassin trilogy, we're hoping to get Trent soon back to do others, Renegade and Heretic, and so on. But the audiobook of Greyshade is available now, and you can get it. And there are the two books, Greyshade and Renegade. Yes, can't wait for the cover on that third book too. It's going to be sweet.
I don't read books about hairy ticks, though.
Hairy ticks are not my favorites. Trent, thank you.
And I also narrate BattleTech and Shadowrun.
Yes, and you should get all of that from Trent's really very, very gifted at all of this, so you should do that. And obviously, a gifted role player. We will see you, Trent, back here for the weekend, and back here for more of this for Beowulf for next week. Chat, can we get some love for the amazing and awesome Trendane Sparks? Good work today. Wonderful opening session for a Realfer, and can't wait to see more. Trent, thank you. I will see you soon. Bye for now. Lovely. All right. What's up, Big Boss? That was great. I really, really enjoyed that a lot. So far, this has gone exactly as I hoped it would go, with these amazing and awesome players and friends doing this. And I think it's come out really well so far. And I think that's largely down to not only their play, but also to their commitment to the way the game works. And I think that the game is sort of proven that it can sort of sustain this, which is really cool. So I am excited about that. So yes, nominations. Yeah, no, I have not forgotten. Thank you, Triffid, for sure. So before we all leave here today, two reminders. First of all, I'm going to be over on GOG.com's Twitch channel in a little over an hour with Talisman Adventures. You'll want to stop by for that. And then tonight I'll be back at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I will be playing a game with your Vocalists, the amazing voice acting team from which Tren is an alumnus. I don't yet know which game I'm going to play. I have a couple things that I'm thinking about, but I hadn't decided which one yet. So we will see. And it'll be something cool, but we're done with Ace Attorney. We have finished with it for now. And so I am looking forward to seeing what that all looks like. So let me pull forward my polls. There we go. There is ArvBot Plus. So what we're going to do now, chat, is nominations. So next week, I'm going to be doing some Highland Song during this Tuesday spot, and the Tuesday after that will be the Patreon-fueled chat chosen game of the month. So what I'd like to do now here is, there we go, that should be good. So please nominate a game. Now I will, again, tell me a game, one game per person, please. I do reserve the right to veto this game if it's something which I've already played or am going to play anyway, so there's no reason to waste like a spot. Or if it's something that is like a horror game that just doesn't really grab me. So yeah, it's Chance of Senar. I remember you've been trying to get that in for a while. There we go. Chance of Senar. Got that. Okay. Yes, I remember that. I'm actually, I think that looks like it's going to be a lot of fun when I do get a chance to play that. Other suggestions, chat. Other nominations for the Patreon Fueled Chat Chosen Game of the Month. We have Chance of Senar. What else would people like to do? That is Effect Life's nom. Do we have a nom from Deserted GM, from Triffid, from Big Boss, from any of the folks who are around, from Trent if he's still here? I think Tari Tunes has probably gone to bed by now, but does anyone have any other nominations that they would like to add to this list besides Chance of Senar? Zin Never Dies. Now, what is that? Can you tell me what Zin Never Dies is? This is a video game, right? I should specify that the Patreon game is a video game. Zin Never Dies. Yeah, that's what I thought. So Zin Never Dies. Yeah, that's a tabletop. Yeah, no, I just looked. Sadly, no. This is a video game because it's me, myself, and I doing it. We do a lot of tabletop on here. Yeah. Seems cool though. I'll have to definitely check that out at some point, but sadly, I do play. I don't always do all tabletop stuff. So, obligatory Metal Gear Solid 2. Okay, yep, obligatory. Very good, very good. All right, that's cool. Effect Life. Okay, if we get one more, then we have a nice, good set of nominations that we can use. Final vote for this, by the way, will happen. So the vote will happen all this week, and the vote will conclude next Tuesday. So by next Tuesday, we'll have this concluded. So we have Chance of Senar, we have Metal Gear Solid 2, and then we have one more. If people have one more stream they want to throw up there of a video game-related thing. One more possibility. And we had a couple people stopping by and watching on YouTube. I don't know if we have anyone over there right now, but I have done choice of games. I thought about the Arvocalist, but the problem is with that, it's not as many distinctive voices. It's a lot of the narrator, Triffid, so I'm not sure that I would go that direction, but for that, I would consider doing it. The problem with choice of games, though, is that I already do something like that with Tari and with the Gamebook illustration streams, and then once in a while I even did that with like D&D with viewers, although right now I'm doing more straight D&D, so that's all. Listen, anything like that, I actually played Pool of Radiance on here, Deserted GM, so if you wanted to throw up, not Pool of Radiance because I've already done that, but if you wanted to put up like, I have all of them. What is it? That Curse of the Azure Bonds. If you wanted to throw that up, you could do that. I'm not telling you what to nominate, but if you wanted to do one in that regard, you could totally do Curse of the Azure Bonds if you wanted me to do something, an old gold box one. Champions of Krynn. All right, I'll buy that. Sure. Champions of Krynn. Okay, good one. So I'll take one nomination if we have them. Otherwise, we can stay with these three. So we have Chance of Senar, Metal Gear Solid 2, or Champions of Krynn. All good choices. All good options. I would happily play any of these. That was fun today. I'm looking forward to getting more people aware of it and more knowledge and getting more people out to these things, but not me buying the classic TSR bundle on Steam. I already have it on GOG.com, actually. I already have the bundle through GOG. Yep. I love the gold box games. Also, I think I have the, or I can get the, I forget what they call it, but it's the thing that gives you the auto map, which makes the game so much better. That they added later on, that someone added as like a mod for it. I forget what it's called, like the auto mapper or the auto gold, something that like, I don't know if you've seen it, but it like adds on that extra map thing. So that is very cool. And I did Pool of Radiance with that too. All right, then I say we're going to go with this. Good 3 choices, everybody. Chance of Centaur, Metal Gear Solid 2. Yeah, no. I did that myself. Listen, I have a guess, Deserted, that you and I may be of a similar age. I'm 51, and I'm here to tell you I did that back in the day, not because I wanted to, because I had to. I am more than happy to have auto maps. Man, when I got that with Ultima Underworld, and Ultima Underworld actually had auto maps where you could put notes right on the map, I was like, oh, right in the 48. Yeah, man, I know the drill. And listen, like, I mean, there was a lot of great stuff that came out of that. Don't get me wrong. But I am very happy to have some quality of life improvement stuff, like an auto map, like save anywhere, like not a single save. If you look in my VODs, you'll find a rant about Wizardry, the original Wizardry, which is... So there you go, Triffid. So that's the one that we're going to put together into the next game. Chance of Centaur, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Champions of Krynn. Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, I actually love maps. I do. In fact, I will note, you will note that Greyhawk is sitting right over there because I play a Greyhawk Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign over on GOG. So I love me some maps. Don't get me wrong. But having said that, I think I like looking at them more than making them. So I am happy to sort of have them, not so much to have to make them up myself. I mean, when I'm actually putting it together for the work for my writing, for my novels and so on, I'm often sort of conscious of like directions and thinking of that stuff. But it's helpful when I have someone who's like, you mean like this? And I'm like, yes, like that. You know, like it makes a big difference that I know what the map actually looks like when it's on the page. So. Okay, Triffid, have we got those 3? No rush. Just do you have the 3? Oh, you do. Thank you. I have quite a collection. Exactly. Bilbo Baggins. Yeah, exactly. Affect life, right? And everyone's always like, man, is this what you always had to deal with? Yes, it was. Still there. Still the trauma is real. Anyway, thank you so much for that. So that is going to be added to the next game command chat. So you can go over and vote there. That vote is going to be up there all the way into next week. And after the session, after next Tuesday's session, next Tuesday's day session, we will close it down. And one of these 3, Chance of Centaur, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Champions of Krynn will be there. That's the deal with that. Thank you so much, Triffid, for all of that. Great stuff. Thank you, everybody. And of course, the polls brought to you, the polling system brought to you by the amazing Affect Life, who is awesome sauce and knows all things relating to these things. Okay. Yes, I'd like to close that. Okay. All right, chat. I'm going to go because I have to go get some lunch. I need to get Talisman Adventures up and running, up and ready, and I need to figure out the game I'm playing with my vocalist tonight. I think I have a guess, but I'm not 100% sure. So I will know definitely more of that. Pretty much exactly right. Thrown into one of his maps. So I am very excited for that. So if you like what you saw and heard, may I recommend that if you come back in an hour over on GOGCom's Twitch channel, I'm playing Talisman Adventures over there. Not D&D, but it is also a tabletop role-playing system that is originally based on the amazing 80s Talisman board game. That is coming to an end, that campaign. We have another, I would guess, I don't know, depends, anywhere between 2 and 4 sessions, and then that will come to an end. And then we'll be moving into Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which is also run on that channel. We'll go twice a month instead of once a month. Right now we do once a month Saltmarsh, once a month Talisman. When the Talisman is over, we'll just do twice a month Saltmarsh. So that's what we're looking at. So that's happening then. And then I'll be back tonight on this channel as well at 9 p.m. Eastern for my amazing voice team doing stuff. And Triffid's amazing events listing on my Discord really makes that super helpful. So, but I'm going to rise up on out of here now. I want to thank everyone who made this an awesome stream today. Thank you so much to those of you who have followed tonight, but if you haven't followed, please consider doing so. Please check out our YouTube with !ArvTube. For those of you who are over on the YouTube channel, thank you for being here, and please come join us on Twitch as well. Subscribe to me on YouTube. That's free for you to do, but helps us out a lot. Discord is !ArvCord, where you can hang out with the Arvanauts in between streams. Twitter is !ArvTweets. excuse me, website is arvaneleron.com. Blue Sky is !Arv_Sky as well. On the literature front, on the writing front, the payment front, I should say. First of all, !Arv Shop is my merchandise area. You can see stuff for the Infinity and Beyond crew. You can see stuff for the the Eberron crew. You can see stuff for the Shire Adventures crew. My general channel stuff. You're also going to be able to see some old Adventures of Middle Earth stuff there. My channel stuff as a whole. So we're going to see more things over there. You can get stuff there, which both helps you and helps the channel. You can get stuff also by supporting our Patreon, !Arvtreon. That is always a big thing, which helps us out a lot. And subbing to the channel as well helps us too, as was done with several of you today. So please support the Patreon and sub if you can. And thank you all for being a part of that mix. On the publishing side, !Icarus, my graphic novel from Athos Arts. !Library is my Tales and Tomes, The Forbidden Library. That's my 5e adventure and sourcebook from Alligator Alley Entertainment. And oh, and I should say, from that, the adventure Return to the Forbidden Library is going to be held at the Klein Memorial Auditorium in Bridgeport, Connecticut on Friday, January 26th. That's a free event to attend, or you can watch the live stream. But if you happen to be in the area, we'd love to see you there in person. There'll also be a little mini-con with a couple of stores and things like that selling merchandise beforehand in the lobby, which we're calling KleinCon. So you should definitely join us for both of those things coming up a week from this Friday. And the second adventure in that in Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library, which is that library link that I talked about, that is the adventure that I'm actually running for that live cruise. You can pick that up at that link. You can also pick up my Greyshade Grey Assassin trilogy, Greyshade. First two books, Greyshade Renegade, already out. You can buy them now. You can also buy the audiobook of Greyshade from Trent Sparks, who you saw just now for the last 3 hours. You can also pre-order the tabletop role-playing game from Brandon O'Brien and Alligator Alley Entertainment, coming out late this year, and you can, which is also 5e compatible. What? And you can also support us by pre-ordering Heretic. Remember, pre-orders are life, pre-orders are love. Heretic, which is the final book in the Grey Assassin trilogy from Athos Arts, which is coming out in the summer of this year. So tabletop game late this year. Heretic will be coming out in the summer of this year. Last but certainly not least, BLM, Black Lives Matter, important to affirm and assert the significance and importance of Black lives. Help Now, the World Health Organization page on suicide prevention. I should probably put something in. I should put a pre-order link in there now, since we're now officially, this year is when it's happening. So I should put that there. Let's see, Help Now, World Health Organization page on suicide prevention. Please make sure to reach out when you need help, and to reach out when others need help as well. And Ukraine, UKRAINE, to help the people of Ukraine as they fight back against an illegal and illegitimate war with bravery and courage, and send the message we will do so for others in the future. Thank you to everyone who watched today. Thank you to my wonderful mod, Triffity Mats, who was here today the whole time. Thanks, Triffid. Thank you to my wonderful Patreon supporters and subscribers. Thank you to Triffid. Thank you to Effect Life. Thank you to Deserted GM. Thank you to Trendane. Always a pleasure. Trend, wonderful work today on the play side of things. Thank you so much. Thank you to, as always, Esthix, Big Boss, Defective, Hillness. What's up, Hillness? Lurking there. Thank you to Jagtris, to Joseph, to Mark. Thank you to Sleeping Beauty, to T-Bank. And thank you to This Is Unreal. And thanks as well to Tari Tunes for all the amazing art, and for her play in Beowulf as the other player of this adventure. And also thank you to Nari, who is the one who wrote the music, and Peripheral Mike, who did the video that you're about to see as we do our outro here. I'll see you over on GOG.com in a little less than an hour for Talisman Adventures, and back here at 9 p.m. Eastern for a new awesome game with your vocalist. Until then, everyone, please be good to each other, and bye for now. Then on the strand, with steeds and treasure and armor, their roomy and ring-dight ship was heavily laden. High its mast rose over Hrothgar's hoarded gems. A sword to the boat guard Beowulf gave, mounted with gold. On the mead bench, since he was better esteemed, that blade possessing heirloom old. Their ocean keel boarding, they drove through the deep, and Daneland left. A sea-cloth was set, a sail with ropes firm to the mast, the flood timbers moaned. nor did wind over billows that wave swimmer blow across from her course. The craft sped on, foam-necked it floated forth o'er the waves, keel firm bound over briny currents, till they got them sight of the Geatish cliffs' home-known headlands. High the boat, stirred by winds, on the strand updrove. Helpful at haven the harbour guard stood, who long already for loved companions by the water had waited and watched afar.